Chapter 766. Fatty One was in a daze. Ghostface Mask does not belong to the honorable Marshall continent. If not, he would have left long ago. Tang Tian did not know that there were two important people watching him from the shadows. He was completely shocked by Xiao Lan's terrifying power. In Wu Feng's every move did not escape the glass mental state, and even Tang Tian could not help but praise In Wu Feng's craftiness and experience. Being caught off guard, In Wu Feng's vision turned white. He groaned, ignoring everything else. His figure turned into smoke and escaped outwards. Pa pa pa. When the last drop of blood dripped, In Wu Feng fell to the ground. The life and death of the army is unknown. How can I rest in peace? What technique is that? In Wu Feng already knew that his mission had failed. The Ghostface Mask's strength had far exceeded his expectations. It quietly floated in front of him. Tang Tian's mind moved. A blue light quietly shot into the wall in the corner, as though it could pierce through nothing. He had thought of all sorts of possibilities, such as failure, but he did not find it strange. He had used In Wu Feng because he believed in his strength, and also because he wanted to test the waters. If he could be killed, it did not matter if he was Ancestor Li's inheritor. Dead people were never important. Tang Tian was shocked. He subconsciously formed the grasping flower seal. The blue light continued to shine, but Tang Tian, who was at peace, did not feel that it was piercing to his eyes. Countless light figures swept past the glass mental state, and a blurry figure shrunk to the corner of the wall. What is he trying to do? But out of all the possibilities that he had thought of, he did not think that In Wu Feng would be killed so easily. That strange and terrifying blue flower made him feel a chill down his spine. Ancestor Li's legend had not been completely forgotten, and the legend of the heavenly flower was still being passed down by word of mouth. A gust of wind blew past, and there was nothing on the ground except for a dusty sword. Without thinking, he wanted to escape. His intuition towards danger had saved his life countless of times. Honestly, Fatty One felt that the possibility of success was very small. No, extremely small. Such a small chance of success. There was no meaning in investing, but why was his heart palpitating with excitement? The blue light flew out from the wall. It was extremely fast, and the shocked In Wu Feng only had time to raise the growing Yin sword in his hand. Suddenly, he lowered his head and inadvertently glanced at something, only to be stunned. Between his fingers, a bewitching blue flower was shockingly visible. The dust particles exploded one after another. Tang Tian's mind trembled. If it wasn't a dream, then what happened in the ocean of peace? Tang Tian's head buzzed, and he felt goosebumps all over his back. Was this not a dream? Faintly, the ocean of peace appeared in front of Tang Tian's eyes. The scene of everyone rushing towards the sky like a tidal wave and being smashed into pieces. All of the porcelain-like figures. All of the resolute figures. All of them roaring out in anger that shook everyone's hearts. Just as Tang Tian's mind moved, the small bronze sword flew in front of him. The small bronze sword carried the style of the Southern Cross Army. Its blade was covered with cracks, causing Tang Tian to think of the broken porcelain heroic spirits in the ocean of peace. That Ghostface Mask would definitely return to the sacred Saint Galaxy. Thinking of this, Fatty One's mind swayed. Thinking of this, Fatty One hesitated. The strength of the honorable Marshall continent had long been deeply imprinted in the hearts of the Sin Domain people. Can Ghostface Mask defeat the honorable Marshall continent? The sudden light aura that shot out from the house shocked In Wu Feng. Old Man Zhu was confused by the name of Ancestor Li's inheritor, but Fatty One was extremely clear. He could tell that Ghostface Mask's ambitions were not in the Sin Domain. Furthermore, Ghostface Mask's powerful martial strength had sobered him up, and from a different angle, he immediately felt that his vision was clear. How can I rest in peace? Tang Tian slowly opened his eyes, only to realize that he had tears streaming down his face. 10,000 years of obsession, 100 years of reincarnation, the heart of the army, the heroic spirit will not die. As though it had sensed Tang Tian's thoughts, the undying sword trembled. Its powerful and solemn hoarse roar sounded out. like a strong man's sad song, like a raging inferno burning his body. The fighting intent pierced through the sky. It was extremely heroic. A blue, bewitching flower stuck onto the blade of the growing Een sword. Tang Tian looked at the words in a daze. The powerful and hoarse roar that reverberated in the sky above the ocean of peace seemed to be right beside his ears. Hearing the familiar sound of the spore exploding, Een Wufeng's heart calmed down. They looked down on the poor Sin domain. He instinctively twisted his waist and dodged to the side, but his chest suddenly felt pain, and his body froze. No need for protection. Rest in peace. The blue flower on his finger suddenly lit up. The dazzling blue light instantly enveloped the entire room. Tang Tian, who had tears in his eyes, finally understood. It was not Xiao Lan who had summoned him into the dream, but the undying heroic spirits, because he was the true leader of the Southern Cross Army. Suddenly, his gaze landed on the six-armed demon, and as though he was struck by lightning, he was dumbstruck. On Een Wufeng's corpse, there was a tiny blue wound. The blue color of the wound quickly spread, and very quickly, the strange blue color spread to his entire body, causing Een Wufeng's corpse to become sparkling and translucent like a sapphire. Is this a dream? Een Wufeng's pupils dilated, and in the next moment, the dazzling blue light erupted without any warning, and the tide of Southern Cross Army advanced. He only had one thought in his mind: escape. To an assassin, it was undoubtedly a fatal mistake. Xiaolan. The fatty looked at the old man and said indifferently, Elder Zhu's words are wrong. Whether or not I think it is not important. What is important is what other people think. The fatty kept his bitter smile and said sternly, Legends say that in the past, Ancestor Li's demon six seals had the illusion of heavenly flowers falling. As expected, it is not a dream. The glass mental state was sparkling and translucent. Without a speck of dust, the sapling was extremely eye-catching. And if Ghostface Mask truly wanted to return to the Sacred Saint Galaxy, he would have to fight with the Honorable Martial Continent. Let's see Lu Sheng Xiang's reaction. The old man said faintly. The old man remained silent. What's going on? There's a line of small words on the sword blade. Ancestor Li's inheritor might seem important, but in truth, it was not important at all. The truly important thing was Ghostface Mask's strength. Without strength, using the title of Ancestor Li's inheritor was simply seeking death. If he was strong enough, even without the title of Ancestor Li's inheritor, he could still move unhindered in the Sin domain. Even if he personally took action, he would not be able to do better than Xiaolan. The crystallized corpse started to crumble. How was that possible? Tang Tian held onto the bronze sword that was filled with cracks and muttered, From today onwards, you will be called the Undying Sword. With my heart, the heroic spirit will not die. Senior's heroic spirit, fight with me. Every spore that exploded would release a fine silk, and in the blink of the eye, a thick silk screen was formed. All of the spore silk were extremely tough, and the crucial point was that there were many of them. Although the blue flower was bewitching, but to break through the layers of defense was not an easy task. A blue flower petals wrapped around the growing Een sword and returned to Tang Tian's room. After throwing the growing Een sword in front of Tang Tian, the flower petals disappeared and transformed back into Xiaolan, which entered Tang Tian's body. In the weeping sword seal's palm, where the sound sand was, a small bronze sword swam around like a small fish. The gray sword screen scattered, and countless of fine dust particles flew in all directions. Boswin knew the meaning behind Old Man Zhu's words. Lu Tian had not appeared for a long time, and the various families started to guess if he had met with a mishap. Everyone could think of it, so how could the experienced Lu Sheng Xiang sit and watch? Sharp Wind City was currently filled with experts, waiting for Ghostface Mask to walk into their trap. But for some reason, Fattywan did not believe that Sharp Wind City could stop Ghostface Mask. But he did not refute there was no meaning in such a fight. After inspecting his own body, Tang Tian became even more bewildered. Suddenly, his face changed. Even though he could not see, But Yin Wu Feng, who had already grasped the entire place, was still able to accurately follow the escape route that he had long planned out and not blindly fly into the sky. He was experienced and knew that flying into the sky in such a passive state was equivalent to exposing himself to the enemy and would only make him a target. That was the only word left in his mind. The scene in front of him gradually returned to normal. He looked at the terrifying flower in front of him in a daze, fresh blood slowly dripping down the petals, revealing the beautiful and bewitching blue color. The life and death of the army is unknown. How can I rest in peace? The blue flower suddenly transformed into a rain of flowers, sweeping up the growing Yin sword on the ground, and entered Tang Tian's room. The moment he saw Xiaolan, he suspected that it was a dream. If it is truly a dream, then what is Xiaolan? The sacred Saint Galaxy, such a distant name, the homeland of my ancestors. Fatty Wen, who was born in the Sin domain, did not have deep feelings for the sacred Saint Galaxy. But he knew one thing. The sacred Saint Galaxy was not as poor and destitute as the Sin domain. Even Yin Wu Feng failed. The middle-aged man who spoke was fat and dressed extravagantly, like a merchant. The old man raised his eyebrows. Does Boswin truly think that he is Ancestor Li's inheritor? Yin Wu Feng, who was frantically escaping, suddenly felt as though he was being stared at by a wild beast. The hairs on his body tensed up. His heart was shocked. Without thinking, he suddenly pounced to the side, the growing Yin sword in his hand releasing a layer of sword screen to protect his entire body. In the distant corner, the two people who were watching from afar had pale faces. He retracted his chi, not daring to reveal anything, and hid in the shadows. The law he trained in was extremely unorthodox, called Ghost Yin Mushroom. His law surface was like a mushroom. Thus it was called Ghost Yin Mushroom. The power it projected was extremely feminine, and the Yin attribute power was extremely suitable for concealing his chi. The scene of the viscous red blood slowly retreating from the beautiful petals caused people to feel a chill in their hearts. The other person was an old man with a face full of hardships. His hands were covered with calluses. He looked no different from an ordinary laborer, just that his eyes had a faint light flickering. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "Does Boswin recognize this flower?" Tang Tian immediately inspected his body. He subconsciously caressed the sword blade, and a familiar and intimate consciousness came to him. That is... Damn it! Yin Wu Feng, who had calmed down, became even faster. He stuck close to the wall of the alley and swept forward. The thick silk screen behind me was instantly pierced through. How is that possible? Yin Wu Feng quietly concealed himself outside the house. The blue light that leaked out from the house was extremely intense, causing him to feel uneasy. Just at that moment, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. People who were proficient in assassination were extremely sensitive to danger. The wall in front of him suddenly lit up with a blue light. The blue light seemed to have a power that could suck away one's soul, causing one's heart to palpitate. The dream was extremely clear. Every single detail was extremely clear. Chapter 767. But with such an intense explosion, even Ghostface Mask will not be able to survive. Ghostface Mask, who was covered with blood markings, stood quietly in the night, his scarlet eyes staring at the martial artists, brimming with killing intent. All of their hands lit up with dazzling light auras, converging into one. He had nowhere to run. You are fated to be enemies with the world. Su Yi felt that Master was agitated. In the eyes of the majority, Ghostface Mask was a liar. Someone shouted out from the crowd, causing everyone to be filled with courage. Even the people who were hesitating threw their hesitation to the back of their minds. That's right, they are in Sharp Wind City. They have the advantage in numbers. So what if Ghostface Mask is powerful? Even if the entire world is his enemy, even if my body is crushed, even if I have nothing, I am not afraid at all. Seniors of the Southern 10 armies, just wait and see. We are also very powerful. So fast. Wasn't Master injured? Why? 40 martial artists, without even releasing a single move, were reduced to dust. Su Yi forcefully stabilized himself, his face filled with shock. Master is. Wherever the ripple passed, The space seemed to distort and shatter. Then let's begin. He was deeply shocked, extremely touched, but not envious at all. Immediately, 10 figures pounced towards Tang Tian from all directions. Most of the martial artists' eyes landed on the terrifying slash marks on the ground, their faces changing. But there were a few martial artists who looked at Tang Tian with blazing gazes. What kind of failure can compare to being crushed once every 100 years? What kind of sorrow can compare to being trapped in an ice coffin for 10,000 years? This guy is definitely bluffing. The exploding light ball gradually dimmed and dissipated. A light sound came out, like a watermelon exploding. What a joke! Before forming the Weeping Sword seal, Tang Tian would never have thought that the unique characteristic of the Weeping Sword seal would actually be vibration. The tiny, undying sword spun around. Waves of strange ripples slowly rippled out. When the dust dissipated, only a third of the majestic city wall remained. With a 50 m long and 15 m deep crater, it looked like a terrifying wound. Luckily, the martial artists who were remorseful for their slow reactions only rejoiced in their hearts. The ghost face mask was actually so terrifying, in one move, 40 martial artists were all killed. No one could see if the slash mark was personally made by the ghost face mask, but a few of the quick-witted fellows had already thought of a few ways to create such a deep hole. A few of them concluded that Ghost Face Mask was a liar and wanted to create such a huge pit to scare everyone. A wave of fine, invisible ripples spread out in all directions. However, the vibration occurred within his body and directly affected Tang Tian's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. This left Tang Tian with no way to deal with it. But very quickly, Tang Tian experienced the beauty of the Weeping Sword seal. His internal organs, which were very difficult to refine, became increasingly tough under the continuous high-frequency vibrations. A swindler had a glib tongue and knew how to act, but as soon as he made a move, he would be exposed. He didn't want to wait a moment longer. Ding! Generally speaking, it was very difficult for sound wave attacks to cause any damage to Tang Tian's internal organs. Tang Tian's flesh, blood, muscles, and bones were extremely strong. When the vibration touched his body, it would be automatically resisted and weakened by his body, disappearing into nothingness. I'm Ghostface Mask. Tang Tian took advantage of the night to leave East Immortal City with Su Yi. The martial artists surrounding him froze. Their roars disappeared. The light auras of their laws stopped moving. Their sinister expressions froze. Because he had his own glory, he had his own brothers who could live and die with him, brothers who could entrust their backs to them without any worries. They had gone through the flames of war, they had gone through life and death situations, and they had the same beliefs and fought side by side. There was no fluctuation in his voice, as though he was narrating an extremely ordinary matter. The unconcealed killing intent was like the night wind, causing everyone to feel a bone-chilling intent. Out of the 40 martial artists, more than half of them were elites who had gained enlightenment on lost surfaces, and when they lost control of their laws and self-detonated, the resulting explosion was extremely powerful, and even though they were watching from afar, they still felt that it was terrifying. Overlooking the sharp wind city in the night, he could feel the raging fighting intent in his chest. The ghost face was covered with blood lines. It was extremely sinister and terrifying. His black pupils were like burning red iron, extremely eye-catching in the night. The Southern Cross Army's glory beliefs belonged to Bing, belonged to Exen, belonged to Screw, belonged to the undying heroic spirits. They had once fought side by side. They had once shared life and death under the same flag. They shouted and burned with their beliefs. Su Yi was completely shocked. What technique is that strange little sword? So terrifying. What they are writing now is a legend that belongs to them. He suddenly formed the Weeping Sword seal, and a small bronze sword floated in front of him. The dazzling glory was truly touching, but it was the glory of the past, the glory of the seniors, and not his, even if he was the current leader of the Southern Cross Army. The high temperature of the explosion did not dissipate, and in the distorted air, a blurry figure wearing a mask appeared. He flicked the sword blade with his finger. All of the martial artists of Sharp Wind City who had rushed over noticed the proud figure in the sky, and their faces changed. When they saw the collapsed city walls and gigantic crater beneath Ghost Face Mask's feet, they could not help but take in cold breaths. What are the setbacks and predicaments in front of me? The high-frequency vibration's destructive power was astonishing. Tang Tian knew that, but he never thought that such a vibration would actually appear in his own body. Tang Tian watched as Sharp Wind City got closer and closer. The fighting intent in his chest suddenly soared. With a flick of his wrist, Suyi, who was in his hands, was flung 300 m away. Countless blood splattered out at the same time. The law-light aura that was out of control exploded. The dazzling light ball engulfed Ghost Face Mask's body. The light aura from the explosion mixed with the blood, adding a tinge of blood, as though it was a dazzling blood sun. Tang Tian's speed suddenly increased, like a sword that swept forward at lightning speed. Tang Tian's speed increased exponentially. His entire being became like a wisp of smoke, flying to the sky above Sharp Wind City. Tang Tian watched on coldly, as though the scene in front of him had nothing to do with him. It was no secret that the Fu family wanted to deal with Ghost Face Mask in Sharp Wind City, and in the past few days, the rumors regarding Ghost Face Mask had spread far and wide, but the majority of the rumors were about him impersonating Ancestor Li's inheritor, which became the joke of many people. Bang! Tang Tian flew forward at full speed. The ice-cold wind was like blades. His heart was like a raging inferno, burning wantonly. Tang Tian knew what that meant. The power of the physique did not come out of nowhere. It came from the 5 viscera and 6 bowels, and when the 5 viscera and 6 bowels became stronger, it was like the soil becoming more fertile, and the trees would naturally grow better. Tang Tian's strength had increased explosively. He had already formed 3 seals out of the 6 demon seals. The angry fist seal caused his entire body to be filled with chi and blood. The grasping flower seal caused his mind to be crystal clear, but the weeping sword seal was completely different from the other 2 seals. Everyone's expressions froze and suddenly turned into fear. What better prey could there be than a pretentious liar? Everyone was stunned by the terrifying scene. My own strength has improved again. A small blood scar appeared on a martial artist's face. Following that, more and more blood scars appeared, like a red spider web. They were like porcelain that had been smashed, and were once again pieced together. The blood scars were everywhere. Suyi was being carried by Tang Tian and felt extremely awkward, which subordinate was being carried by their superior. He thought of ways to get Tang Tian to let him down, but Tang Tian ignored him. In the night, the outline of Sharp Wind City gradually became clearer, causing Suyi to open his eyes wide. Suddenly, his entire body became lighter. The wind became even more intense. The master was increasing his speed. The frequency of the undulation was extremely high and had long surpassed the limits of what the human ear could capture. He looked down on everyone indifferently. We have more people. Tang Tian did not move an inch in the night. He did not have any intention of dodging. The feeling of his 5 viscera and 6 bowels vibrating at the same time made his body numb. If not for the angry fist seal's red light continuously tempering him, causing his 5 viscera and 6 bowels to be much stronger than before, just the frequency of the vibrations was enough to injure him. Sharp Wind City sank into a dead silence. The deep voice reverberated in the sky above Sharp Wind City like rolling thunder. No one could tell if he was happy or angry, but it overpowered all the shouts and roars. Feeling the slight numbness in his body, Tang Tian used all his strength to rush forward. The blade aura pierced deeply into the city walls, and the high-frequency vibrations immediately spread out along the city walls. The sturdy city walls were like biscuits that crumbled with a bang, causing dust to rise up. The heroic spirits in the ocean of peace made him feel that time was pressing. Only the brave can win. The noisy Sharp Wind City instantly became quiet. Tang Tian never thought of escaping. Sharp Wind City was as bright as day. He raised his arm and slashed down. A terrifying blade aura that brought along countless of minute ripples entered the city walls. Those who imprison my subordinates will die. Sharp Wind City was the Fu family's territory, and in the city, the Fu family was the true owner. If I kill him, the Fu family will definitely reward me handsomely. Wherever he swept past, formless ripples would spread out like water ripples. Tang Tian could feel that the space around him was being dismembered and shattered by the fine, vibrating ripples. Ghost Face Mask. What's going on? Someone's attacking? Tang Tian raised his right arm. The formless ripples, with his arm as the center, slowly spread out. The Weeping Sword Seal's vibrations were extremely unique, unless Tang Tian released it. Otherwise, the vibrations would only be felt at the moment of contact. The pitch-black and quiet Sharp Wind City awoke from its slumber. All of the residences quickly lit up with lights. The sharp and shrill alarms rang out incessantly. One after another figures surged out from every corner of Sharp Wind City, all of them soaring into the sky. For some reason, Tang Tian suddenly thought of that, and the corners of his mouth behind the mask twitched. As long as there was merit, the Fu family would never be stingy. But although he was not injured, Tang Tian still felt uncomfortable. Sui was extremely shocked. He only felt that his master was as fast as lightning. The wind blowing against his face caused him to be unable to open his eyes. Chapter 768. The growing Een sword in his hand suddenly released a deep whimper. Black mist spewed out from the sword blade, but it seemed to be slashed apart by the sword. The clouds in the night sky surged under the slash, but the growing Een sword's blade did not tremble at all, even under such an astonishing might. The two of them were extremely astute, and initially planned to watch first. But upon seeing Ghost Face Mask's move, the two of them immediately knew how powerful it was, and knew that they could not watch by the side. Thus the two of them took action at the same time. Tang Tian did not know what a demon was, but he had his own understanding. That's right, it is willpower, the willpower to save everyone no matter what, the willpower to win no matter what. I will let him know how powerful I am. Just like ancestrally in the past. Wherever the black/aura passed, it would destroy everything. The shattered auras rained down like rain. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, effortlessly carving out a path of blood. Fu Zhongji was not an inflexible person. He was very clear that in front of absolute strength, all schemes and plans were just a joke. Against such an arrogant and bloodthirsty person, why do we need to speak so much? The person who spoke was tall, his eyes were sunken in, he had an eagle nose and thin lips. He had an indescribable, sinister aura. But Fu Zhongji immediately laughed. I am truly thinking too much ancestrally. In the past few hundred years, there was only one ancestrally. All the people who hailed as Ancestor Li's inheritor, none of them could reach Ancestor Li's height. No, they could not even reach half of Ancestor Li's height. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame Ghost Face Mask himself. The title of Ancestor Li's inheritor had long been overused, and it was nothing much. But a powerful Ancestor Li's inheritor would definitely become a thorn in the eyes of the four main cities. If they added in the mysterious Ursa major null division, the four main cities would no longer be afraid. Such power and might was enough to topple the Sin domain's current structure. A few figures appeared beside Fu Zhongji at the same time, surrounding Tang Tian. All of them had unkind expressions. In front of the black/aura, the light auras that had just lit up were as weak as bubbles and shattered. Fu Zhongji regained his composure. He soared into the sky, his gaze landing on Ghost Face Mask, and said, "Such might. Not only did you disturb the rest of the seniors, you even dared to start a massacre in Sharp Wind City. You truly have guts." Tang Tian did not move at all. All kinds of mockery and ridicule entered his ears, but he remained indifferent. The enemies surrounded him tightly, but he still remained indifferent. Ghost Face Mask raised his right thumb and pointed at himself. Before he finished speaking, Ghost Face Mask, who was surrounded, suddenly disappeared. Xiao Hongguang and Ao Guman Sneak Attack had also touched Tang Tian's body, But the two of them groaned at the same time. They felt their hands go numb and realized that there were fine ripples around the ghost face mask. But he never expected that ghost face mask would actually kill his way to his doorstep. There can only be one winner in this battle. This was what it meant to become a demon on the spot. Only with such a strong will could one become a demon. Fighting against the heavens, fighting against the earth, fighting against men, fighting against the entire world without fear, without cowardice, and without wavering. Thinking back to the scene where the besiegers were dismembered by the fine ripples and turned into a rain of blood, the two of them shuddered. 3 lists of powerhouses martial artists, adding close to 100 first-rate experts. With such a luxurious formation, Ghostface Mask definitely had no chance of turning the tables. Fu Zhengji's figure had just disappeared when the growing Yin sword brought along a sky full of black chi that slashed down. The short sword in Fu Zhengji's right hand thrusted out towards Ghostface Mask. The short sword's green light erupted. Countless of green light threads surged out frantically from the sword's blade and coiled towards Ghostface Mask. Woo! The only thing that worried Fu Zhengji was that Ghostface Mask was avoiding him. So he wantonly created an imposing aura. On one hand, it was a sure-win situation, and on the other hand, it was to force Ghostface Mask into the trap. Ghostface Mask, who was in the crowd, was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in Fu Zhengji's eyes, and it was time for him to enjoy victory. A scalp-numbing sound came out, and the black mist that converged into a slash aura flew out from the sword. Amidst the rumbling sound, the growing Yin sword slashed onto the dense green light threads. Sharp-winged city trembled. A slash mark that was over 70 m long appeared on the ground. It was like an ugly and terrifying wound, appearing in front of everyone's eyes. Only with my heart in the sky can I soar. Fu Zhengji was shocked, but he quickly calmed down. If such a good situation can be turned around, then I might as well find a tofu to kill myself. Regardless of whether it was the discussions or the ridicule, none of them could move him. The ghost face mask that was covered with blood markings was extremely sinister and terrifying. His eyes seemed to have flames burning in them, and a deep voice came out from behind the mask. Gained the upper hand by a show of strength. Ao Gu Man was cunning and sinister. His strength was unfathomable. He had countless enemies, but no one could do anything to him. He dominated a region, but for some reason, he had quietly arrived. His eyes blurred, and an afterimage appeared in front of him. Arrogant to the extreme, he was enraged that Ghostface Mask had directly come knocking on his door. It was completely different from what he had planned. He had laid out the foundation and created an imposing aura and planned to use the opportunity to push the Fu family to a higher level. The light aura in Tang Tian's eyes erupted. He had borrowed the momentum and the growing Yin sword in his hand. Although the sword was not as smooth as the blade. But at that moment, Tang Tian did not notice it. He had never been so focused before. His willpower was so resolute. More and more people floated up. All of them were the heroes that Fu Zhengji had invited. Although they were not martial artists on the list of powerhouses, but they were all famous people with profound strength. At that moment, the slash aura that had not lost its momentum pierced into the ground. Instant Demon Transformation. Instant Demon Transformation was the first technique that Tang Tian had learnt, but he had never unleashed such might before. Young man, with just a bit of ability, who knows where his tail has gone? Facing the light threads, Tang Tian was not afraid at all. A look of indignation flashed past Fu Zhengji's face. He felt that he had firmly grasped the situation, but the other party was still so arrogant. He quickly calmed down and said coldly, "If you surrender, I will let you live." His body suddenly became a shadow and was pulled into the halo. He could see that the fine ripples were vibrations at an astonishing frequency. But vibrations were not high-level laws, so how could they have such power? The group of people that had pounced forward were all strong, but were destroyed in one move, which meant that Ghostface Mask was much stronger than the rumors. That's me. The Fu family's treasure, Chief Greenswords. Not good. Fu Zhengji's eyes turned cold, and unknowingly, 2 wooden short swords appeared in his hands. The wooden swords had a bewitching dark green color, with light auras revolving around them, as though there was a regiment of mist surging inside. The crowd was enraged. Everyone rubbed their palms together, wanting to teach Ghostface Mask a lesson. Fu Zhengji dodged quickly, but the people behind him did not have the time. All of the experts revealed looks of despair, but they were all experienced fighters and knew that it was a life-and-death situation, and all of them used all of their strength and used all of their trump card to protect their lives. Ghostface Mask's speed was extremely fast. How could the four main cities agree to it? The other man was around 20 years old. He was extremely young, handsome, and well-developed. He had a carefree bearing. He chuckled. "Are you Ghostface Mask? Originally, you were going to walk your own path, and I was going to walk my own path, but I never thought that you would steal my master's name. To seek your own death, I have no choice." There were no problems with the arrangements. There were no problems with the plan, but all of the arrangements and plans could not avoid the core problem, and that was Ghostface Mask's strength. Then come. Furthermore, how can I be kind? But to have ideas on me, how can a person who is satisfied with the title of Ancestor Lee's inheritor have high ambitions? Truly seeking death. He had absolute confidence in succeeding because he had the support of the four main cities and with the support of the Liu family. What could Ghostface Mask do? There can only be one victor, and that is me and only me. His eyes lit up with a strange light aura. His entire aura underwent a huge change and became as majestic and unshakable as a mountain. Borrowing the power from the light threads, the short sword in his left hand trembled, and a green halo suddenly appeared. He did not have any plans to speak. He had directly killed his way in and had no intention of being kind. The surrounding people were in an uproar. All of them were enraged by Ghostface Mask's arrogance. It was dead silence. Fu Zhengji's face was a mix of green and white. He was both furious and fearful. Only by throwing away all distracting thoughts and fighting and winning can everyone obtain the chance to survive. Suddenly, a green halo lit up around the two of them, and with a flash, Fu Zhengji appeared behind them. He was in a sorry state. His clothes were in a mess, especially his right sleeve that was in tatters, revealing half of his arm. When Tang Tian saw him, his eyes congealed, although he did not recognize him. But he could sense that the aura being released from his body was not ordinary. Of course, he did not know that the man had a huge background. He was the fifth-ranked, a great infamous man, Ao Gu Man, who was infamous. Ghostface Mask suddenly spoke, causing everyone to quiet down. Fu Zhengji's eyes revealed a look of complacency. There was no need to mention Ao Gu Man's strength. If not for the four main cities pushing him from the shadows, the Fu family would not have been able to invite Ao Gu Man. Xiao Hongguang was pleasantly surprised. He did not know where the young man came from, but his strength was tyrannical, and he was definitely able to enter the list of powerhouses. Ghostface Mask's move had caused his heart to tense up, and it was the first time he had wavered in his plan. If you don't win, then die. Boom. Why don't you open your eyes and see what this place is? If he didn't win, he would die. Yes, that was it. The battle intent in Tang Tian's body burned uncontrollably. Not only did the surrounding crowd not make him feel any fear, but it made his fighting spirit even more ostentatious. There was no need to worry about friendly fire or where the enemy was. Even in death, he would not waver. Only then could he become a demon. Although Xiao Hongguang had a smile on his face, his eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he had the title of Ancestor Lee's inheritor, but Ghostface Mask was more famous than him. The majority of people only knew of Ghostface Mask and not Xiao Hongguang, and it was his battle to prove his name. Tang Tian seemed to have understood something. Only victory could save them. Witnessing the move, Ao Gu Man and Xiao Hongguang's faces changed. This man is so ferocious and cruel. If we do not destroy him today, how can the Sin domain have peace? Everything he saw was an enemy. All of the crazy, bewitching green light threads instantly crumbled. Fu Zhengji's face changed. The tyrannical slash caused him to feel suffocated. How can he unleash such a terrifying slash? Buzz. Chapter 769. But spirit treasures were only suitable for military generals. To the soldiers, star treasures were more useful and had a higher value for money ratio. Even in Heaven's Road, star treasures were unable to be produced. Heaven's Road did not lack spirits, but lacked energy and was unable to allow spirits to grow into star treasures. Until today, he actually succeeded in restoring a small piece of the Prairie Fire Ocean. No, it was the Prairie Fire Pool. Little Fool suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked, "Have the living spirits been formed?" Little Fool immediately appeared in the laboratory. Upon entering, his gaze was immediately attracted to the pool in the center of the laboratory. It was a square-shaped pool with a length and width of 10 m. The deep blue water resembled a small ocean, and flames floated on the surface. Richard Jr. did not laugh. He knew how powerful the childlike spirit general in front of him was, and immediately replied, "Because the attributes of the living spirits are different, and the energy they require are different as well. The sea of energy has all sorts of energy, and is the most suitable place to nurture them." Ling Su did not speak any nonsense. He picked up the wine bowl in front of him and downed it in one gulp. The Honorable Marshall Continent's armies were too large, and despite the layers of attacks from Bing, the front lines were in a tight spot. The three of them went through a simple training. Crane's performance was the best. He was naturally intelligent and had dabbled in all sorts of miscellaneous knowledge, thus improving the fastest, and in a short period of time, he was able to do well. Ling Su was not as intelligent as Crane, but he had a fierce and aggressive personality and was able to display a decent fighting strength and was naturally suited for long-distance harassment. Jing Hao was arranged to defend the Shang continent, while Crane and Ling Su would lead their troops to the front lines the next day. "We need more prairie fire pools." Little Fool's tone was extremely firm. "There are no problems with the required materials and funds. What do you want?" Ling Su did not say a word, and just drank 3 bowls. Prairie Fire Pool. Richard Jr. could not help but become excited again. He thought bitterly. Ling Su and Crane said at the same time, feeling a fire burning in their chests. At the same time, they raised their heads and drank, the wine flowing down from the corner of their mouths. Even Crane, who valued etiquette the most, did not care about it. "Why do we need to nurture them in the sea of energy?" Little Fool asked, but even so, his voice was still childish. His peaceful and leisurely life was broken after he submitted a report. Master Bing specially rushed back from the front lines and came to his laboratory, which was the first time Master Bing entered his laboratory. Master Bing described an ocean to him, a mystical ocean with flames floating above it. It was called the Prairie Fire Ocean, and the most mystical thing was that this ocean could produce spirits. Master Bing described the characteristics of the Prairie Fire Ocean in detail, and Richard Jr. immediately realized that the characteristics of the Prairie Fire Ocean were extremely similar to his own research. "You're leaving tomorrow." Jing Hao sighed. He raised the wine bowl in his hand and downed it in one gulp, and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely protect the Shang continent. No return without victory." The waiter pointed at the pond and asked, "What's it called?" Above the mountain peak, the moonlight was like water. The sacred Saint Galaxy possessed an endless sea of energy, but was unable to produce a soul. The war outside did not affect his life at all. He was immersed in his own research. His life was extremely simple, researching and submitting a research report every once in a while. Richard Jr. Jing Hao's dim eyes lit up. He spoke solemnly. "Crane is right. I was impulsive. I will punish myself with 3 bowls. If you want to take the Shang continent, you will have to step over my dead body." "Humph, who knows where Crazy Tang ran off to?" Ling Su suddenly spoke out, his killing intent soaring. "If I catch him, humph, I will stab him to death with my spear." Little Fool looked at the spirit treasure in his hand and revealed a satisfied look. In such a large-scale war, a single person's strength could only be displayed to a pitiful extent, so he might as well take up the heavy responsibility of the equipment. Ling Su wiped the traces of alcohol at the corner of his mouth and said without a care, "Don't worry, I will learn after fighting a few more battles." Looking at the brightly lit sword forest stronghold, The three of them sat side by side. Richard Jr., who was almost forgotten by everyone, had never given up on his hard work. He did not have any complaints. That's right. What was there to complain about? With so many spirit objects for him to research, he did not need to worry about funds, and he did not need to look at anyone's face. That was the life that he had been dreaming of. Crane shook his head. Brother Jing's task is not only not lighter than ours, but even heavier. The Shan continent is our foundation. It is the path to heaven's road, the source of equipment and weapons. If we lose it, the front lines will have no meaning at all. The brightly lit sword forest stronghold was extremely busy. Little Fool suddenly sensed something. The light in his eyes expanded. Little Fool suddenly had a strong confidence towards the war, with the power to change the world in their hands. What else was there to fear? After all, they had spent so much money, they had to let them know of the progress of their research, although he felt that there was no need. Crane nodded his head. There are many famous generals in history who became famous halfway, and our individual strengths are stronger. Even if the situation is dangerous, escaping will not be a problem. Brother Jing, you do not need to worry. His laughter resonated out. He knew of the existence of the Prairie Fire Ocean, but it was naturally formed, and even Bing did not know how the Prairie Fire Ocean was formed. The Prairie Fire Pool would change everything. Jing Hao downed 3 bowls in a row. The one with the worst results was Jing Hao. He had focused on the sword since young, and never had any distractions in his mind. His temperament was just and gentle. His individual strength was the strongest, but he did not have any talent in the study of formations. It was hard to say how useful such a simple training of a military general would be, but the situation was critical, and they could not care so much. The front lines were in imminent danger, and every bit of strength was precious. The three of them did not have any complaints. They knew the disparity in strength between the two sides, and how much pressure Bing was under. Something must have happened. Jing Hao frowned, but then relaxed. But Bing said that he is not dead, and should be here soon. It's good that he is here. He definitely has a way. Hearing that, Ling Su was enraged. He stared at Crane. You want to fight? When Little Fool left the laboratory, he immediately classified it as a restricted area and arranged for the strictest security. And with the fastest speed, he passed the news to Bing. He could imagine, when Bing received the news, he would be wild with joy. Success! Success! We did it! Master Bing left in a hurry. The front lines were in a stalemate, while Little Richard was immersed in the mystical Prairie Fire Ocean. Little Fool said, "The more the better." Crane raised the wine bowl with both hands and greeted Jing Hao. He slowly drank it, then placed it down, his handsome face revealing a tinge of red. His eyes were as bright as the stars, and said seriously, "With Brother Jing guarding the rear, we will not have any worries. All of you must take note of your safety. If things are not going well, your lives are the most important." Jing Hao had a look of worry. All of you are not military generals, and after such simple training, you are going to the battlefield. After interacting for a long time, they knew Jing Hao's character very well. Jing Hao laughed out loud. He poured another cup for himself, raised it up, and drank it in one gulp. How many prairie fire pools do we need? Little Richard did not let the happiness get to his head and asked cautiously. In the next moment, he appeared outside of a laboratory, and even through the wall, he could hear the cheers coming from inside. Jing Hao's tone was filled with loneliness and guilt, which the two of them could hear. His figure suddenly disappeared. Previously, Tang Tian had brought many star treasures, but following the expansion of the army, there were not enough star treasures to use. Thus, Little Fool combined a few spirit treasure refining techniques and refined a large number of black gold weapons. It was under Little Fool's unremitting efforts that the Shan continent's black gold weapons might have increased by many times. With the increase in the standard of the equipment, the Southern Alliance strength had increased greatly. Jing Hao was extremely confident in Tang Tian and firmly believed that as long as Tang Tian appeared, he would definitely have a way to get through this difficult situation. I was thinking too much. This is the last bowl for tonight. Jing Hao looked at the dazzling lights below. Thinking about the journey, he felt extremely excited. He poured the wine for everyone and took the lead to raise the wine bowl and shouted, "Let's drink. We will not return without victory." Crane laughed. He could not help but think about the past and pretended to be serious. On this point, I will support Brother Jing. Although Crazy Tang is unreliable most of the time, but he is able to accomplish seemingly impossible miracles. Don't you feel that the situation in front of us is prepared for him? A spirit treasure could increase a military general's strength greatly, and this point had long been proven by Ishi's son and Xie Yuan. Since they could not compare in quantity, then they could make up for it in quality. If it is short, it will take a few days. If it is long, it might take a few hundred years. Little Richard laughed bitterly. They're like life forms. We cannot control their growth. The birth of the prairie fire pool would deeply affect the development of the war. In the report, he had found the energy density required to produce spirits. Little Fool frowned. Nurturing them in the sea of energy would not only increase the difficulty of guarding, it would also increase the risk of being exposed. But he knew that Little Richard's words were the truth and asked, "How long will the nurturing process take?" "Humph! If that fool cannot personally witness this scene that will be recorded in history, he will definitely regret it to the point that his intestines will turn green." Ling Su is not good with words. He only raised a wine bowl in front of him and raised it towards Jing Hao, and without saying a word, he drank it all. The wine flowed down his throat like fire. After putting down the wine bowl, the three of them looked at each other and laughed out loud. Little Richard looked at Little Fool and was extremely excited. "Master, we succeeded! We succeeded!" Crane saw that he had successfully teased Ling Su and smiled with Jing Hao and drank it all. Bing did not explain in detail what effect the prairie fire pool had on the development of the Southern Cross Army. But Little Fool knew that the prairie fire pool that could produce spirits made it possible for them to produce star treasures, and that was an invention that could change the world. Yes, Little Richard recovered from his excitement and immediately said, "The first batch of living spirits had 12 of them. Now, they have been sent to the Sea of Energy to be nurtured. They are still weak and require the Sea of Energy to absorb enough energy." Ling Su snorted in disdain. "You guys actually place your hopes on this idiot, naive." Little Richard's voice was filled with joy and sobs. "I truly envy you guys to be able to go to the front lines to fight." Jing Hao revealed a look of self-ridicule. "But a pity I'm not smart enough and am unable to learn how to lead and fight." Chapter 770. A standard army consisted of 5,000 men, which also meant that adding all the enemies involved in the attack, they numbered 13,000 men. Furthermore, the direct subordinated armies under him were true elite armies and were only inferior to the direct subordinated armies of the 5 generals. Just by relying on these 3,000 men, he had the confidence to destroy 2 of the standard armies. But what he did not expect was that not only were Cliff's 3rd army unable to take down the position, they had instead lost half of their forces. This made Cliff furious. He had 5 of Cliff's standard armies under him, and he scolded the commander of the 3rd army and immediately ordered Cliff's 2nd army to attack. The various armies of the Southern Alliance who had never experienced a large army before were unable to adapt. The defensive line that they had set up quickly became riddled with holes. Xie Yuan's Swift army also felt the immense pressure. Xie Yuan was also prepared to retreat because Bing's mission for them was to set up layers of defense, and there were still a few defensive lines behind them. Cliff did not look down on the enemy. In the short span of 3 days, he had invested in 2 of Cliff's standard armies, and on the last day, he had even mobilized his direct subordinated army that numbered over 3,000 men. "My soldiers have already lost the confidence to win." Cliff quickly made the judgment in his mind. To the guest army, it was a dangerous signal. Until now, when they saw the enemies leaving like a tide and disappearing, the extremely taut nerves immediately relaxed. Although the southern region's trade was developed, but the Southern Alliance did not have an absolute advantage and was not even the strongest powerhouse, and compared to the honorable Marshall Continent, they were not even on the same level. Such an opponent is worthy of respect. He did not know that at the moment, Countless people in the southern region were discussing about him and his army. They had to take the opportunity when the enemies were resting and reorganizing to leave. If they did not leave now, they would not have another chance. The next wave of enemies would only be more intense, and if they stayed, they would only die. 5,000 men. I actually completed my mission. How many people do they have? Cliff, who was expressionless, swept his gaze across everyone. He could see the slight relief in their shocked gazes. Cliff was the #1 general undergo Chung Wondao and was famed for his bravery. He had a tall and sturdy figure. His hair was white. His eyes were gray like a corpse. His expression was forever cold and stern. He was an iron-faced man, and the army he was in had the strictest military discipline. None of the surrounding soldiers had the strength to stand. Everyone was lying in the mud like a pile of mud. Standing alone at the front of the formation, the white-haired Cliff suddenly saluted the swift army. Xieyuan looked at the enemies retreating like the tide in front of the formation, and the breath that he had been holding back suddenly relaxed. Fatigue surged up like the tide, and his legs felt as heavy as lead. His body swayed, and finally he could not hold on any longer and fell on his butt in the mud. He couldn't believe it. He wanted to laugh out loud, but his throat felt like it was on fire and smoke, and he could only make soundless chuckles. It was said that he used to be ranked outside the top 100 in the southern region. How could such a guy stop him? Greedily breathing in the fresh air that still had some smoke, Xieyuan felt that he didn't even have the strength to move a finger and fell asleep. Every soldier was equipped with a spirit object, and the strange long whip in Xieyuan's hand was even more powerful than a spirit object. Compared to this army, his direct subordinate army was as simple and crude as a farmer. Retreat and rest for 3 days. Just by relying on their defensive line and equipment, they are able to withstand such a ferocious attack. Klee's men had attacked countless of cities and strongholds and had many military achievements, but no one had ever done such a thing in front of him. Disregarding the spoils of war, Xieyuan immediately ordered the army to take advantage of the rainy night to quickly retreat. It was truly a pile of mud. At the end, all of their weapons were either destroyed or destroyed. There was not a single piece of the formation that was intact. The enemy's attacks were extremely ferocious, and the entire formation had been plowed countless of times. The smoke gradually dispersed, and the blue sky appeared in Xieyuan's vision, causing him to feel as though he was in a different world. The downpour had awoken all of the fallen soldiers from their slumber, and the entire formation had become a pile of mud. Everyone's eyes that had lost their focus regained a trace of life. He could vaguely see the aura of the legendary armies. There was no joy in victory. The entire swift army only had 3,000 odd men left. All of them were injured, and the rest were in the formation, never to wake up again. Everyone quietly moved the corpses of their comrades and buried them, removing the spirit objects to prevent them from falling into the enemy's hands. The defensive line that the Southern Alliance had set up was rather standard. It was like a sturdy net, but in the face of the oppressive power, it quickly crumbled. The collapse of a defensive line was an opportunity bestowed by the heavens to the famed generals. As long as they grab hold of it, it would be a crushing defeat. A crushing defeat was something that no famed general was willing to see. The morale of the soldiers would drop to the lowest point. They were sensitive and weak, like birds that were startled by the twang of a bough. As long as the wind blew the grass, they would panic and fall into a hysterical state. Xieyuan, an unknown man, was actually able to block his attack. Their momentum was broken. Cliff's second army returned in defeat. Just as the armies at the front were preparing to expand their gains, an army was like a nail that was firmly nailed to the crucial point of the defensive line. If it did not pull out the nail, the pursuing army could be threatened at any time. Other than their comrades, there were even more enemy corpses. The number was so many that no one had the time to count. Over 20% of the 3,000 elites were injured, and what made Cliff feel the most helpless was that 3 days had already passed. Even if they were to pull out the swift army, they would not have a chance. Cliff's face was ashen, but the enemy's defensive line was as stable as a boulder, seeing that every attack would leave behind a pile of corpses. Even though he was known for his iron blood, he still felt pain in his heart. Seiyuan, an unfamiliar name. It was a common occurrence for the defeated armies at the front to break through their own defensive line. The bewildered subordinates slowly retreated, but Cliff did not leave. His gray eyes stared at the battlefield in front of him from afar. He was awoken by the rain. Where did so many spirit objects come from? Cliff noticed the nail at the first moment and immediately ordered Cliff's third army, which was the closest to them, to destroy the army. For a pursuit like this, every second was precious. Opportunities were fleeting. As long as the enemy was given the time to breathe and reorganize, the enemy would once again stabilize the situation. In tenacity, there were a few times when the enemy's defensive line was about to be broken, but they were forcefully stabilized by the enemy. But the enemy did not budge. They are too strong. He did not know how they lasted through the day. He gave his all and gambled everything. The rhythm of the battle was insane. The mission was completed, but he was unable to retreat. The enemy was advancing wave after wave, like a tide. They did not give him the chance to retreat. They did not even have time to care about the spoils of war. Seiyuan had some lingering fear in his heart. Luckily, the rain came at the right time. If not, if the enemy were to sneak up, none of them would be able to escape. On the third day, the enemy became even stronger, and their casualties increased. Seiyuan's eyes were bloodshot, and at that moment, he did not have any thoughts of retreating, only killing and killing. You treat me like a statesman. I will repay you with my statesman. Cliff's order caused an uproar. Many of the soldiers revealed looks of disbelief. They stared blankly at the iron blood and merciless Master Cliff. They were unable to imagine that such an order would actually come out from Master Cliff's mouth. I look forward to our next battle. After the second day ended, the swift army was completely numb. Finally, Seiyuan became famous after one battle. Of course, he knew how dangerous the order was and the disparity in strength between the two parties, but he did not hesitate. It is not suitable to attack. Cliff finally could not hold it in anymore. He led his direct, subordinated army of 3,000 men and personally attacked. When he obtained the new moon phase swallow general whip, he secretly swore in his heart, which he had never forgotten. When Seiyuan noticed that the entire defensive line had signs of collapsing, he made an unexpected decision. He did not give the order to retreat, but decided to retreat later and delay the enemy's advance. In morale, everyone crawled up and quietly packed up their positions. Clenching his teeth, he chose to continue holding on. But an hour later, he received an order to retreat. The order was simple: for him to hold on for another day. Seiyuan did not know who was fighting with him. There were too many of them, and their attacks were too ferocious. While retreating, Seiyuan was surprised to realize that the battle had caused a swift army to be reborn. Not only did many of the soldiers break through in strength, but after experiencing the cruel battle, the entire army's temperament had become even more stable and experienced. He quickly threw the distracting thoughts to the back of his mind. He naturally did not need to worry about the matters of the higher-ups. I am just a military general, and obtaining victory on the battlefield is my only duty and mission. Under the shocked gazes of his subordinates, Cliff turned, and without looking back, he left with large strides. He had never looked down on any of his enemies, and furthermore, it was an enemy that caused him to suffer such a huge loss. He was extremely clear that the person in front of him was a true elite army. Cliff thought about the rumors that he had heard in the continent, and his heart moved. Could it be? Cliff looked at the gloomy expressions on the faces of the soldiers around him, and knew that their morale had fallen to rock bottom. Seiyuan knew that they were stuck, and if they were to retreat now, they would definitely be wiped out. Ignoring the extravagant spirit objects, the strange tactics, the meticulously arranged defensive line, the swift army still had many things that attracted him. For example, their synchronization rate, the extremely terrifying synchronization rate that was definitely above 95%. Just this point alone was enough to make 99% of the armies in the Sacred Saint Galaxy blush with shame. The scene of the previous battle surfaced in his mind. The Swift Army's fighting style was extremely unique, but what truly left Cliff with the deepest impression was the Army's extravagant equipment. Chapter 771. Without hesitation, the undying sword shattered the sword aura, and like a cannonball, it fiercely struck onto Ao Guman's bronze ring. The dragon serpent inside the bronze ring's light aura did not even have the time to whimper before the light aura crumbled, and countless of cracks appeared on the bronze ring. Ao Guman looked as though he was struck by lightning. Blood spurted out from the sky, and like a kite with its string cut, he fell to the ground. CFA Ran was from a middle-grade family in Sharp Wind City, and had a close relationship with the Fu family, so even without Fu Zhengji's words, he came forward to help. Seeing Fu Zhengji spitting out blood, his heart was overwhelmed with shock. A small bronze sword that was covered with cracks appeared in front of Ghostface Mask's weeping sword seal. How can I rest in peace? How can I rest in peace? In the dead silence of Sharp Wind City, everyone only felt their vision blur, and the 10 of them lost all signs of life. They lost control of their bodies and fell down like dumplings. Before Xiao Hongguang could even frown, his pupils constricted again. His exposed eyes were like red-hot iron, indifferently and mercilessly emitting a blazing heat. How is that possible? If there was a change in the top 10 of the list of powerhouses, it would definitely shake the entire Sin domain. What followed was the rise of many families and the fall of many families. Fu Zhengji's reaction was very fast. He knew that everyone was stunned by Ghostface Mask's slash, and knew that something was amiss. Tang Tian immediately sensed that Xiao Hongguang's hand seal looked similar to the one he had gained enlightenment on, but in terms of charm, there was a huge difference. Who else? Come. The light auras that had their laws shattered were resplendent like fireworks, dazzling and gorgeous in the dark night. The top 10 of the list of powerhouses were godlike figures in the Sin domain. Every single one of them was a legend, and their experiences and stories only existed in legends. The list of powerhouses would change every few years, but the top 10 of the list of powerhouses had never wavered in the past 10 years. His palm was in pain. A blue light blossomed from his palm, that is, his pupils dilated. But so ugly. Xiao Lan effortlessly pierced through the heads of the 10 of them, and in the blink of an eye, all of their foreheads had a bloody hole. Everyone only saw the blue light that was as fast as lightning. The laws that they had unleashed were like paper in front of this unremarkable blue light. Out of the 3 of them, Xiao Hongguang's expression was the strangest. He was shocked, surprised, and had a look of incomprehension. He stared at the Ghostface Mask for half a day. The mask was covered with blood veins that resembled a red spider web. It had a bewitching luster in the dark night. It was extremely eye-catching. How powerful was the Fu family's patriarch? Yet, he wasn't the opponent's match. Let me show you my weeping sword seal. Before his expression could change, a bloody hole appeared on his forehead. How many of his consumptive consummate techniques could Ghostface Mask unleash? Undying. Xiao Lan, who was covered in blood, became even more excited. Ao Guman and Xiao Hongguang had no other choice. Fu Zhengji, being ambushed and injured, already caused their hearts to turn cold. If he allowed Ghostface Mask to kill Fu Zhengji, then there was no need to fight, and he could just escape. The power of that slash just now was so terrifying that everyone's hearts trembled. But if it was an ultimate move, then it would make sense. How could this be? Have a taste of my weeping sword seal. A dazzling sword aura flew out from his hand seals that were as fluid as flowing water. It was like a whimper, like a lady's sad song in the middle of the night. It entered everyone's hearts. Figures continued to fall, and the sky looked like dumplings. Tang Tian did not care about it, as Ao Guman and Xiao Hongguang joined hands to stop him. Is he truly Ancestor Li's inheritor? If an ordinary slash was able to cause 3 lists of powerhouses martial artists to be in such a sorry state, then Ghostface Mask's strength was too terrifying. To everyone's understanding, only those in the top 10 of the list of powerhouses could reach such a level. In his eyes of disbelief, the undying sword transformed into a shadow and clashed with his sword aura. Fu Zhengji only felt a cold intent behind him. His face changed. Not good. Everyone revealed looks of understanding. The fear in many of their eyes dissipated, and they once again became eager. They once again saw the hope of victory. Almost everyone had one or two trump cards, and these trump cards were either used to escape or to kill. But regardless of which technique it was, they all consumed a lot of energy. It was normal to exhaust half of one's strength, but exhausting all of it was not rare. Clang! He had trained in the Demon Six Seals for many years, and with one look, he could tell that Ghostface Mask's right hand was actually forming the Weeping Sword Seal. Although Ghostface Mask's Weeping Sword Seal was the ugliest Weeping Sword Seal he had ever seen, and he looked at it with an indescribable discomfort, but he was 100% sure that it was the Weeping Sword Seal. It must definitely be his ultimate technique. Like an extremely fast sword slicing through the surface of water. Behind Fu Zhengji, countless of fine ripples suddenly spread out, and a ghostly figure could be faintly discernible inside the ripples. He suddenly sneered. You do have some skills, but how many more of these ultimate techniques can you unleash? Ao Guman's expression became serious. His eyes revealed hesitation and hesitation. He had seen all sorts of experts, but the man in front of him gave him the scent of danger. A thought of retreating surfaced in his mind. He had accepted the invitation to return a favor, but if he were to lose his life, it would not be worth it. In front of him, a small blue flower floated quietly in a place where he could touch it. Tang Tian's chest was surging with emotions. He hissed out and resonated with the low, whimpering sword hiss. Weeping Sword Seal. Shaohan Guang Seal formation attracted Tang Tian's interest. The Demon Six Seals was something that he had comprehended from the heavy, demonic execution. Shaohan Guang Seals were elegant and agile, causing people to be dazzled, and compared to his own seals, it was much more beautiful and handsome. Without knowing the life and death of our army, how can we rest in peace? In the stifling silence, under the fearful gazes of the entire Sharp Wind City, he slowly swept his gaze around. Shaohan Guang's white and slender fingers released a jade-like luster, attracting everyone's gaze in the darkness. His 10 fingers moved like floating clouds and flowing water. His hand seals were constantly changing. It must be his ultimate technique. The roars of countless heroic spirits sounded out in his ears, and an unforgettable scene surfaced in Tang Tian's mind. The faces that were filled with cracks, the pairs of steel-like eyes, the figures that risked their lives to soar into the sky. Compared to the three of them, the other people's faces were completely filled with fear. Ghostface Mask's terrifying slash had not only left a deep scar on the ground, it had also taken away a few lives. He reacted quickly. The wooden sword in his left hand was placed behind him in a panic. This guy, the low whimpering sound that caused people's scalps to tremble, instantly suppressed all other sounds, and the entire sky above Sharp Wind City became silent. Layers of extremely fine ripples spread out from the small bronze sword's body. In a short period of time, the initially crowded crowd was reduced by half, and it was sparse. That was why, unless it was a life and death situation, ordinary martial artists would definitely not use their ultimate technique. A powerful slash fiercely slashed onto the wooden sword. Fu Zhengji only felt his palm heating up. He was almost unable to hold onto the wooden sword, but he knew that it was a life and death situation, and forcefully held onto the sword hilt. He felt a sweetness in his throat. He spat out a mouthful of blood. As though he was struck by a heavy hammer, he flew out. Shaohan Guang's hand seals became even more agile and graceful, but Tang Tian shook his head inwardly. The Weeping Sword Seal looked good, but in his eyes, it was just for show. The sword aura shattered into fine auras. All of the peak martial artists were the true rulers of the Sin domain and the true big shots of the Sin domain. They maintained a tacit understanding between each other, and even the subordinate families beneath them maintained a tacit understanding and restraint. Almost everyone believed in Fu Zhengji's guess, including Ao Guman and Shaohan Guang. They were all martial artists on the list of powerhouses and understood the concept of being in the top 10 and understood how deep and unfathomable the terrifying strength of the big shots were. He didn't notice when this little blue flower had appeared. What is that? Is it the treasure of some unlucky person who died? A look of greed flashed past his eyes, and he extended his hand out to grab the blue flower. His mind that was initially muddled by his hot blood instantly became clear. All the so-called contributions, all the so-called fawning in front of killing were not worth mentioning. The backlash of failing to form the seals had actually caused him to lose control. A beautiful blue flower that was stained with blood flew out from the back of his head. Backlash. Fu Zhengji looked at the figure in the sky that resembled a demon god, his heart overwhelmed with shock. What was that? The terrifying slash marks on the ground behind him, in the darkness, looked like cracks that led to another world, containing endless dangers. The temperature of the night seemed to have suddenly become much colder, and his heart also became cold. Xiao Hanguang's face turned white. His hands that were forming seals became numb. A terrifying vibration extended out from his palms, causing the blood in his body to churn. Although Ghostface Mask was strong and had a few spectacular battles, he might be able to squeeze into the list of powerhouses, but that was all. It was different from Xiao Hanguang's Weeping Sword seal. The Undying Sword's whimper was like the war song of an army in the smoke. It was gloomy and austere. Its voice resonated out in all directions. Suddenly, Xie Ran regained his senses. He was startled. What is that? Southern Cross Army, advance! Tang Tian could tell with one look that the opponent was using the Weeping Sword seal. A bronze ring had appeared in Ao Guman's hands. The bronze ring blossomed with light aura. Inside the yellow light aura, a flood serpent image swam around. Tang Tian waved his hand, causing Xiao Lan and the Undying Sword to return to his side. Top 10 on the list of powerhouses? Xiao Hanguang's eyes constricted. That is, Weeping Sword seal. That is, woo. As though it could sense Tang Tian's state of mind, the sky full of howls caused the Undying Sword to vibrate even more intensely. The ripples around the sword body became even more concentrated. The low whimpers caused the entire Sharp Wind City to tremble. Ghostface Mask's bewitching blood eyes finally revealed a slight change. The light aura erupted. It was unknown if it was absorbing life, but Xiao Lan became even more alluring. His right palm suddenly formed the Weeping Sword seal, which was different from Xiao Hanguang's nimble and ever-changing hand seals. Tang Tian's seal was as stable as a boulder. He did not move an inch, and the Undying Sword that was revolving around the demon palm in his body suddenly disappeared. The might of the bronze sword caused Xiao Hanguang's face to change. Just as everyone's fighting spirit was reignited, no one noticed that the position where Ghostface Mask was previously was empty. Xiao Hanguang looked at Tang Tian in disbelief. His long and slender fingers were trembling nonstop, blood trickling down the corner of his mouth. An ultimate technique is the most logical explanation. This joke is not funny at all. Chapter 772. The figure that was frantically escaping froze. He opened his mouth, but before he could even scream out, he lost control of his body and was flung out for a distance of 70 m. Everyone then saw that the figure on the ground was Ao Guman, but he no longer had any signs of life. His life was extinguished. That's right, Ghostface Mask had disguised himself as the sweetest prey, attracting countless of hunters, and at the last moment, the prey revealed his fangs. What a dense death aura! He was thrown to the side by Tang Tian and had personally witnessed the entire process of the battle. But at that moment, his mind was in chaos, filled with thoughts of Tang Tian's slash, the resolute slash, the slash that he had staked everything on. He was extremely moved. In his mind, Master Ghostface Mask was already an extremely powerful person, and such a person should cherish his life and not take such a risk. Everyone's heart turned cold. No one dared to move. The blue light was like a mirage. The blue flower had unknowingly floated back to Tang Tian's side, as though it had become even more beautiful. But the scene in front of him made Tang Tian look at the Sin Domain's treasures for the first time. He suspected that Xian's final technique was inseparable from the Death Thumb Ring, the ultimate treasure of death laws. Sharp Wind City is willing to surrender. Fu Zhengji's mind involuntarily had that thought, but very quickly, he threw it to the back of his mind. Anyways, it's not me. What he needed to think about the most was how to protect himself. Ao Guman was killed while escaping. Other than proving how terrifying Ghostface Mask was, it also told Fu Zhengji that escaping was definitely not a good choice. As long as he could find this strand of life, Suyi, who trained in life and death laws, could use the dense death aura to nourish the strand of life, allowing it to grow stronger. In front of Ghostface Mask, he was like an ant. If he had known that Ghostface Mask was so powerful, Fu Zhengji would definitely not dare to have any thoughts. But why is Ghostface Mask's strength so different from the reports? Suye's pale white face was filled with shock. Wave after wave of death aura converged into a black wave, and like a wave, it continuously swept across the sky above Sharp Wind City. Ghostface Mask was like a reef in the sky. He did not move an inch, allowing the black wave to strike him, as though he did not feel anything. The pure death chi carried the aura of death. Apart from those who cultivated the law of death, normal humans would instinctively reject this kind of aura. Boundless fear occupied Fu Zhengji's heart. He felt that he was extremely foolish and overestimating himself to actually challenge such a terrifying man. Who could go against him? His face grew paler, but his eyes shone brighter and brighter. In the sky, Tang Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. Like Fu Zhengji, Xiao Hongguang's face changed. He also thought about the death thumb ring. If it was someone else, they would have long since been turned into a corpse and devoured by the black flames. Fu Zhengji suddenly understood. Suyi, you must survive. Hong, a surging pillar of black flames soared into the sky, straight into the horizon. It was as if the door to hell had been opened in that position, and the surging death aura crazily poured out. The aura of death became denser and denser, and it rose rapidly. Compared to this old fellow, he was still too inexperienced. Xiao Hongguang sighed in his heart. He had no other way out and could only kneel down. Xiao Hongguang is willing to surrender. The change between life and death was profound and unfathomable. Other than Su Yi himself, no one else could save him. Fu Zhengji had thought of countless of endings, but none of them were like the one in front of him. He had thought of countless of methods, but none of them could be used at the moment. Life and death were like shadows, like the two sides of a coin, always following each other and unable to exist alone. A blue light flashed in the sky. Tang Tian forcefully stopped himself from rushing forward to save Su Yi. He didn't even look at the captives who were prostrating themselves on the ground. Instead, he stared at the terrifying pillar of black flames. Lu Tian, one had died by Ghostface Mask's hands, and there was no longer any leeway for reconciliation. There were many things that were wrong from the start, and there would be no room for adjustment, and it was either you die or I die. Even a powerful martial artist like Ao Guman was unable to withstand a single blow from Ghostface Mask, and no one dared to resist. Fu Zhengji stared blankly at Ghostface Mask in the sky, his heart filled with despair. Countless of thoughts flashed past his mind. Fu Zhengji's back was drenched in perspiration. He knew that his life and the Fu family's fate all depended on that one thought. But Master Ghostface Mask had toppled his judgment. He did not understand why Master was able to unleash such a decisive slash. He felt an indescribable shame, but at the same time, he gained some understanding. Tang Tian forcefully suppressed the impulse in his heart and bit his lips tightly. The circular shockwave that was filled with dense death aura swept across the entire Sharp Wind City. The initially deathly, silent Sharp Wind City had become so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard. Everyone was dumbstruck. Their mouths were wide open as they watched the scene that resembled the end of the world. In the next moment, Fu Zhengji made a decision, and in the silence he kneeled down. It is a hunt. That is... Tang Tian watched the black pillar of flames that shot into the sky. The surging death aura was so dense that it seemed to have materialized. His heart trembled. The terrifying scene in front of him reminded him of Hexine and the terrifying scene that led to hell. The death thumb ring? Tang Tian became anxious. Could it be that I gave the death thumb ring to Su Yi, and Su Yi was unable to suppress it, and was devoured by it? Suddenly, a figure shot out from the ground, like a wisp of smoke. He frantically flew out of the city. There was a dense death aura that was growing at an astonishing speed. The death thumb ring in his hand. The death aura was quietly spreading, and Su Ye's body was visibly deteriorating, like a withering tree. The Liu family was in an unprecedented danger, and at such a time, any hesitation could possibly drag them into the abyss. Ghostface Mask had deceived the entire Sin domain. His disguise was extremely successful, and when the hunters rushed over, they would become the prey, like himself. He was not Ghostface Mask's opponent. How is that possible? Su Yi trained in life and death laws, and if he was able to find a way to live in the endless death aura, he would have the chance to survive. In theory, the densest death aura would definitely contain the purest life force. It was as though under the most intense light, the deepest shadow would be cast. In the other direction of Sharp Wind City, in the crowd, stood an unremarkable old man, his face ashen, his eyes revealing a trace of fear. None of the people around him would have guessed that the person beside them was the famous Lu Shengxiang, the true ruler of Galloping Horse City. Not only would he be unable to help Su Yi, but he would also harm him. Su Yi was previously heavily injured, and the life force in his body had been corroded. It was like a line of defense that was riddled with holes and was unable to block the dense death aura. The two strongest people kneeled down, and the rest of the people no longer had any other thoughts. They all kneeled down and shouted, "We surrender!" How can Ghostface Mask be so powerful? Ghostface Mask, who was in the sky, had an arrogant figure, as though a king had descended. He was slightly regretful. He never thought that the Death Thumb Ring would be so powerful. Previously, he did not have much feeling towards the Sin Domain's treasures. To him, who was used to seeing star treasures and spirit treasures, other than the materials themselves, the Sin Domain's treasures did not have anything worthy of praise. Death was a law that caused people to fear. With such a dense death aura, without any defense, life force would be continuously destroyed. Death Thumb Ring. Tang Tian was about to rush over to take a look, but suddenly he stopped, his eyes constricted, his face was filled with shock. He finally understood how laughable he was. All of his plans and plots were all laughable. Xiaohan Guang stared blankly at Fu Zhengji, who was kneeling on the ground, and scolded in his heart, "What a shameless old thing." Fu Zhengji's reaction was so fast that it caught him unprepared, but he had to respect Fu Zhengji's adaptability. Upon seeing that things were not going well, he was able to quickly make a decision, and still be so shameless. That was definitely a standard. But Tang Tian knew that Su Yi still had a sliver of life, a sliver that was close to zero. Because Su Yi trained in life and death laws, that was why he had that sliver of life. The blood in their faces slowly receded. Despair and fear surfaced in their eyes. Is Sharp Wind City truly going to perish? Tang Tian's gaze swept across the entire place. His gaze was filled with a terrifying pressure, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Like a blue arrow, it instantly pierced through the figure. What a profound scheme. That position. Tang Tian quickly reacted. It's Su Yi. Only Xiaohan Guang raised his head. His eyes flashed with a strange light. He could sense that the ghost-faced mask in the sky was enveloped by a tranquil and distant aura, and when the dense death aura clashed with it, it did not shake the aura at all. Disguise, that's right, it's a disguise. This top-notch martial artist had disguised himself as a weakling, and then he intentionally created a huge commotion, giving people the false impression that he was a weakling. In the Sin domain, people with strong reputations but weak strength were the sweetest prey. The people below became even more respectful. Suddenly, he exclaimed softly. He turned his head and looked out of the city. What do I do? The strength of the top 10 rankers on the list of powerhouses was enough to cause people to tremble. Adding his profound schemes, it was a terrifying thing. In front of the vast and boundless laws that existed since ancient times, humans were as insignificant as dust if they did not have the courage, the willpower, and were afraid of the slightest thing. How would they be able to pry into the profound mysteries? But for some reason, he did not feel much joy in his heart. He looked into the distance, into the endless distance. He secretly clenched his fists. The battle has just begun. Even if they trained in death laws, they were unable to completely remove the life force. They could only use special methods to suppress the life force, allowing the death aura to be even more prominent. Suye's body was completely occupied by the death aura. Fu Zhengji, who was kneeling on the ground, was overwhelmed with shock. The dense and surging death aura made him think of a treasure. Like a statue, he stood there in a daze. Demon's 6 seals. Ghost face mask cultivates the true demon's 6 seals. He looked at the ghost face mask who resembled a war god in the sky, and without saying a word, he disappeared into the crowd. Damn it. Chapter 773. Her current army was no longer limited to the Steel Mountain King Court and the North Snow King Court. Of course, there were no more 2 King Courts, only the Perseus King Court. They were called the Steel Mountain Division and the North Snow Division. The Northern Heroes were the 2 largest divisions of the Perseus King Court, and were extremely loyal. All of these were things that had never appeared in the Savage Continent before. Changing traditions was never smooth sailing, and would often meet with opposition. She was not discouraged at all. She won every battle, causing her prestige to soar to an unprecedented height, causing the resistance she faced to become much smaller. Currently, the calls to unify the Savage Continent was becoming louder and louder among the generals. It was a goal that no one had ever achieved before. Just this point alone was enough to make their blood boil and cause them to go crazy. That was the ambition hidden deep in the hearts of every generation's strong martial artists, and was the hope that every generation's citizens did not dare to hope for. Over there sat the Honorable Martial Continent's #1 great general, Muji Xia. Chie Shengwan knew of the cheers from below, and knew the thoughts of the generals and soldiers. She did not resist, but accepted it naturally, as it was her mission. Although in the depths of her heart, she was just a passerby, an outsider, and becoming their king was a coincidence. To her, it was a battle, but the difficulty of the battle far exceeded any of the battles that she had experienced before. Shang Bei did not know how he left. He only remembered the king's words of "it's been hard on you," which made him feel as though he was bathing in the spring wind and was floating as he walked. The complicated and layered defensive lines were obviously built for this purpose. The Honorable Martial Continent's invasion of the southern region was no longer news, but the intensity of the battle was still eye-catching. She was clear-headed. She was not blinded by power. If we said that it was a coincidence that she subdued the northern heroes at the start, then the continuous expansion of her power was not because she was good at fighting, but because she matched the demands of the majority of the Savage Continent's martial artists. But she was also clear that the possibility of relying on the defensive lines to defend the Shang Continent was not high. The Honorable Martial Continent's fighting spirit was extremely firm, and the losses were not enough to make them retreat. The chair that was won with the King Pagoda was filled with soft velvet. The gigantic chair's back was like a wall, embedded with countless of dazzling gems. Every gem represented a star, and together, they formed the Savage Continent's starry sky. Qian Hui took a deep breath. It was time to start her busy work again. She needed to patiently change it, to dilute the tribe's brand, to select elites to build an army, to set up a system, to select capable officials, to deduce new tactics, etc. The army in front of them was like a tidal wave with no end in sight. The era of slaughter and chaos would end in their hands, and it would end in their hands. Their king was their only hope. Chie Shengwan opened up the map of the Savage Continent, his fingers sweeping across the vast map. Every inch his fingers swept past was 1,000 li. To reach the southern region, she needed to first reach the southern region of the Savage Continent, which meant that she needed to cross the entire Savage Continent. The guards brought over a desk and carefully placed it in front of the throne. Under her command, The maids at the side brought in a large number of files like flowing water. In the blink of an eye, the desk was piled up like a mountain. To be honest, the solemn and dignified King Pagoda did not feel comfortable at all. Deep down, she was very repulsed by such a gesture. It would make her feel that she was just a symbol of power. However, her rationality told her that if she wanted to find Big Brother Tang Tian as soon as possible, it would be faster this way. Xiaoman responded and left quickly. Of course, the current Perseus King Court was still too weak compared to the honorable Martial Continent. The current Perseus King Court was like a balloon. As long as one poked a hole, it would leak. In such a short period of time, there were too many tribes that had joined in. The factions were all over the place. The command was out of control. Their standards were all different. It was like a pot of messy stew. Is Big Brother Tian also watching the sunset at this time? Xie Shangwan threw the pen in her hand onto the desk. At the same time, she calmly dropped a heavy bomb in everyone's heart. Xiaoman landed on the King Pagoda and bowed. Miss, this is the information that we have gathered on the Southern Alliance. Because the honorable Martial Continent had no path of retreat, if they were to lose, Big Brother Tian's influence in the southern region would reach its peak. And at that time, the Southern Alliance would be unstoppable, and the unification of the southern region would be unstoppable. Let the various commanders come and discuss. Very quickly, Xie Shangwan, who was hailed as the goddess of war, accurately judged the situation. From the arrangement of the defensive line, Big Brother Tian had powerful military generals under him. But the disparity in strength between the two sides was too great, and the honorable Martial Continent's 3 great generals were also shrewd and ruthless. The 3 great armies were like 3 sharp arrowheads that pounced towards the Shang continent. The astonishing King Pagoda was carried on the shoulders of 36 Savage Continent's powerful martial artists. Their upper bodies were naked with bulging muscles. Their breathing was long and continuous, and their speed was faster than a galloping horse. The queen did not have any overbearing aura. She spoke slowly and steadily, but every time she spoke, it made Shang Bei feel as though a blade had sliced through butter. All the problems were exposed in front of her. The King Pagoda that was completely made out of gold had a length and width of 25 m. It was shaped like a pyramid, with 108 flights of stairs. Every step of the stairs had carvings of birds and beasts, as well as the heroes of the Savage Continent. Ascending the stairs at the top of the King Pagoda was a 10 m wide platform. There were no unnecessary decorations on the platform, only a single chair. Xie Shangwan secretly clenched her fists and encouraged herself. But the strategic significance of the Shang continent's passageway meant that it could not be abandoned. If only Xian is here. He is smart. Maybe he can guess young Mrs. thoughts. He buried his head down. All of his hesitation had disappeared. He firmly believed that the queen was bestowed to the Savage Continent by the heavens. Her maturity that far exceeded her age, her sharp gaze, her calm judgment, all of it made him exclaim in surprise. Because only a colossal being had the qualifications to shake another colossal being, for example, the honorable Martial Continent. Only like that can I help Big Brother Tian. Shangwan Xianhui sat quietly on the high throne, her gaze sweeping across the crowd that was kneeling on the ground in the distance. She knew that it was another tribe that had submitted. Wherever her King Pagoda went, the majority of the tribes would submit. Xie Shangwan saw the crux of the matter. The Shang continent had become a burden to the Southern Alliance. If they did not need to defend the Shang continent, then the vast southern region will be able to give Big Brother Tian enough space to maneuver and dodge. It's been hard on you. Xie Shangwan smiled. She took it and looked through it carefully. The Savage Continent had very little contact with the outside world, but luckily Xie Shangwan's power was not the same as before. She had secretly sent many experts to the southern region to gather information, especially the Southern Alliance. The young Mrs. voice immediately roused Xiaoman's attention, and she immediately complied. Her gaze landed on the Wei Yiguan continent. She carefully controlled the colossal being, as though she was treading on thin ice. Xie Shangwan praised in her mind. The layers of defensive lines were meticulously arranged. they were both real and fake. She had already found a few places that could be traps. Such a defensive line would make the honorable Marshall continent pay a huge price. No one cared about the name of the Perseus King Court, as long as the king liked it. Those who did not submit were all defeated. Big Brother Tian was at a disadvantage. Chie Shengwan looked at the setting sun in a daze, her thoughts quietly spreading. Her sharp and calm eyes became gentle like water. He was a person who had seen many big scenes, but in front of the young girl, he was completely suppressed by her aura, and there were a few times when his voice trembled. His Majesty asked very carefully. Some details that even he had overlooked were exposed in this kind of questioning. But they had made up their minds. In the future, the Savage Continent would only have one king court, and only one king court, and that would be the Perseus King Court. They had yearned for the Savage Continent to unify for too long, and yearned to end the chaos and killings for too long. But she was the young lady who was hailed as the goddess of war. In a moment, Exin, Taiji, Si Ming, and the rest rushed over. Their expressions were solemn, as though they knew that something big had happened. To the honorable Marshall continent, it was the worst outcome. Shang Bei prostrated on the ground. He spoke of everything he knew while trembling with fear. When night fell, they started to set up camp. Xiao Man's voice broke her thoughts. The gentleness in her eyes disappeared, and she once again became sharp and calm. Her expression was normal, and she said indifferently, "Bring him to see me." When she appeared out of nowhere and won every battle, she started to be viewed as the dawn of hope, as their hope. They worshipped her as their queen, and the Savage Continent's strong request created the current Perseus King Court, a rapidly expanding colossus. She quickly immersed herself in her work and became extremely focused. The bodyguards carrying the King Pagoda also carefully slowed down their speed. The gigantic King Pagoda looked like it was gliding on water without any tremors. The King Pagoda was the request of the two divisions. They saw the dawn of the Savage Continent's unification. When that thought popped out, it grew uncontrollably in their hearts and spread frantically. The light screen that the Perseus King Crown released was as thin as a veil, enveloping the king throne, blocking the Savage Continent's blade like wind and snow. When the King Crown was crowned, the body had to bear its weight. The Savage Continent was never a peaceful place. It was filled with battles and killings. The workload was so heavy that even Taiji, Si Ming, and the rest could not bear to do it. In their eyes, although the king was brimming with talent, but she was still a young girl. Xiao Man stood by the side, feeling weird. Is the young miss going to take action against Muji Xia? But they were still very far away from the Wei Yiguan continent, and to pay attention to Muji Xia at this time, wouldn't it be too early? Chie Shengwan was also awoken from her work. The King Pagoda was quietly placed down, and the bodyguards guarded it vigilantly. She stood up and walked to the side of the King Pagoda. The setting sun illuminated the King Pagoda, and the young lady's figure in the golden light looked like a goddess. Muji Xia is about to make his move. She suddenly spoke out. Xiao Man, get the people below to find out more about the Wei Yiguan continent and Muji Xia's movements for the past few years. The more detail, the better. In the end, he was convinced. No wonder everyone said that she will unify the Savage Continent. Young miss, we found someone familiar with Muji Xia. How can we help Big Brother Tian? The citizens who were watching from afar all kneeled down. Chapter 774. Creak. The wooden door was pushed open, and a delicate and handsome man slowly walked out. When he saw the shock on Xiao Hanguang and Fu Zhengji's faces, he became even happier. He smiled and sat down. Master did not kill the two of them? Taiji and the rest could see it, but they did not believe that Muji Xia, the head of the 5 honorable martial tigers, could not see it. No one has ever conquered the Savage Continent before. The honorable martial continent is unstoppable. The Perseus King Court is becoming stronger every day. Muji Xia was the first to walk into the ice wind gap. My comrades are fighting, Tang Tian said. We need to support them. Muji Xia will definitely take action, and he will do it soon. He even felt that his own strength was not inferior to Tang Tian's. He opened the door with joy and confidence. Why do you want to kill them? Tang Tian shook his head. Tang Tian looked at Su Yi. You want to return to the sacred Saint Galaxy? But no one panicked. Ever since they started following Shangguan Qianhui, they had never lost a battle, one victory after another, and it gave them a strong confidence. At the last moment before his body was burned, he found a tiny chance of survival in the sea of death aura that was so dense that it almost seemed solid. Every single phenomenon was extremely minute, and if it was in the past, he would not have been able to catch it. Furthermore, they were in the savage continent. Surrendering was a humiliating thing to do, and after surrendering, being asked why they were not killed made them feel even worse. If looks could kill, then Su Yi would have been killed countless of times. The swords in our hands have long been thirsty. Wei Yiguan continent. Su Yi saw Tang Tian's embarrassment and laughed, then stood up, allying with other tribes. The possibility of that happening was extremely low, and Shang Bei's Blackwater tribe was the best example. The savage continent was extremely xenophobic, and Mu Jixia had diluted the honorable martial continent's background for so many years, and only used trade to infiltrate, which had a good effect. But at such a sensitive time, for him to choose to join the fray, it would incur the vigilance and disgust of the various large tribes. Tang Tian was flustered and did not know what to do, although he was a tyrant, but it was rare for him to directly declare his position. The savage tribe that was used to fighting, how could they ignore the greedy beast behind Mu Jixia, the honorable martial continent? Can this subordinate ask why Master wants to return to the sacred Saint Galaxy? Fu Zhengji asked carefully. This was the source of Tai Ji and the rest's confidence. In this land, from ancient times till now, they had never failed before. How many famous experts had tried to conquer this land, but without exception, they had all fallen in this snowy land. No one doubted Chie Shangwan's judgment. Countless ironclad facts had already proven this point. In Tai Ji, Si Ming, and the rest's hearts, the honorable martial continent's ambition towards the savage continent was no secret. Su Yi stood up and bowed again. Please allow this subordinate to follow Master back to our homeland. Mu Jixia's weathered face was as hard as stone. He said these arrogant words calmly, but the soldiers in front of him did not feel their blood boil. They did not move at all like steel machines. Like Mu Jixia, their armors were full of scars, and the swords in their hands were worn out and dim. For a top-notch general like Mu Jixia, after more than 20 years of painstaking effort, he definitely had enough trump cards in his hands. Advance! He stabilized his injuries, and with his entire body covered in death chi and black flames, he started to go into closed-door training. The death thumb ring was truly a treasure of death. The death chi surged and flowed endlessly. But for Su Yi, who had gained enlightenment, the death chi was like the best nourishment and training material. No one in the Sin domain doesn't want to. Su Yi said, You are the strongest army in the honorable martial continent, and I'm the strongest military general in the honorable martial continent. The more he knew, the stronger he became. And when he looked at Tang Tian, he felt even more things, and the more reverence he felt in his heart. All of these things were things that he did not have the ability to see in the past. For example, the space around the master had extremely minute distortions. For example, the closer one got to the master's region, the fewer law threads there were. For example, when the wind brushed past the master's body, it would scatter, but when it left the master's body, it would once again return to normal. I want to bring them back to the sacred Saint Galaxy. Tang Tian said, If not for Chie Shangguan descending from the sky, if not for the heroic spirit accompanying her, she would definitely not be accepted by the savage continent so easily. Her faith in the heroic spirit and the mystical method of descending from the sky made her a legend. Other than all of these, she was alone, and that was the most important point. The orderly footsteps were like an unstoppable flood. Mu Jixia, who was walking at the front, secretly nodded his head. The ice wind gaps might was still terrifying, but had reached the lowest he had ever recorded. The threat of the unified savage continent to the honorable martial continent was far greater than the southern region. Taiji, Si Ming, and the rest were all heroes of their own regions and would definitely be able to understand this point. The rise of the honorable martial continent was truly a history of expansion. Expansion and nibbling away was an instinct that was deeply hidden in their honorable martial bloodline. Although the wind power of the ice-wind gap had dropped to its lowest level, but the closer they got to the ice-wind gap, the wind power became even more terrifying. The white light of the formation undulated, but the soldiers inside the white light did not seem to notice it. Their expressions did not change at all as they walked towards the hole. Their imposing manner became one. The formation released a misty white light. The extremely cold air currents and wind blades entered the white light. Like clay oxen entering the sea, they disappeared. His heart was as pure as a newborn. That was Su Ye's first evaluation of Tang Tian after coming out of closed-door training. The Null Division is completely assembled, Tang Tian said firmly. Sharp Wind City, in a wooden house. How do you feel? Tang Tian asked with concern. No one would see the honorable martial continent as the savage continent's hope. The powerful honorable martial continent was like a blazing sun. It would only melt the ice and snow of the savage continent. It would swallow the savage continent whole. In the future, there would no longer be a savage continent. There would only be the honorable martial continent, and their traditions would never return. The tribes that had lived on the land for generations, they would no longer be the owners of the land. That slash contained too many things: faith, perseverance, bravery, willpower. Fu Zhengji's face immediately turned red. He forgot that he was a captive and roared, "That is death. No one who tries to break through will be able to survive." Fu Zhengji and Xiao Hongguang were afraid of Su Ye's strength, adding that they had just surrendered, and were fearful of Tang Tian. They did not dare flare up. The Perseus King Court's momentum had already started to show, and Mu Xia did not have much time left. The current Perseus King Court was still not strong enough, and he still had a chance to win. If Mu Xia did not make a move, the longer it went, the smaller his chances of winning would be. When the last white light disappeared from the ice-wind tunnel, the cracked canyon was once again filled with the whistling of the wind, transforming the death chi into life force. His body was quickly recovering and strengthening. His understanding of life and death had reached a height that the ancestors of the Su family never had. Su Yi asked with a serious face, "When will Master head out?" "That's true. Master is not a person who kills indiscriminately." Su Yi nodded his head, then suddenly changed the topic. "What will Master do after gathering your subordinates? Have you thought a place to go?" Truly perverse. This time, the Death Ring's eruption of death chi was too sudden, without any warning. When he reacted, he was already surrounded by the death chi. The dense death chi had even transformed into black flames, and his body was disappearing. Just as he thought that he was going to be incinerated, Tang Tian's decisive slash suddenly appeared in his mind. When the two of them who were still immersed in Su Ye's transformation heard that, their faces immediately turned black. After coming out of closed-door cultivation, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. If he were to meet He Xian again, he had the confidence to kill He Xian in a one-on-one situation. Mu Xia would definitely not sit by and watch the savage continent unify, and neither would the honorable martial continent. This is unprecedented. Su Yi laughed. The death chi on his body had disappeared, and his temperament had undergone a huge change. The original Su Yi gave people the feeling that he was constantly changing, but now he was like a deep pool, calm and without any ripples, and even Tang Tian was unable to see through him. The most attractive thing was his eyes, which were as black as ink and as bright as stars. The ice-wind tunnel was like a monster's mouth, slowly swallowing the army into its stomach. He did not give up. He unsheathed the military sword at his waist, turned and took the lead, walking towards the crevice in the canyon. The army behind him also unsheathed their swords and advanced in an orderly fashion. Tang Tian was not angry. He looked at the excited Fu Zhengji and said seriously, "I will go." She was seen as the hope to unify the vast and chaotic savage continent. She was like a ray of sunlight that pierced through the darkness. She would bring change to the savage continent. She could bring everyone together, but the savage continent was still everyone's savage continent. No one could guess what Mu Xiao would do, and neither could Xie Shengwan. Once Mu Xiao walked out of the Wei Yiguan continent, he would step onto the savage continent's soil. Suyi maintained his smile. He was not angry. We do not need to conquer them. We only need to defeat them, or more accurately, we only need to defeat the Perseus King Court. We need to make the savage continent return to the past. We need to kill their unrealistic thoughts in the cradle. Destroy. We only need to destroy. Completely destroy. Tang Tian blurted out. I thought the Sin Domain people had already lost their bravery. Everyone's discussion was on what method Mu Xiao would choose. Suyi was moved, but when he saw the awkward smile on Tang Tian's face, he suddenly felt that it was good. He suddenly bowed to Tang Tian. Master's grace of giving me a new lease of life. This subordinate is unable to repay it. From today onwards, wherever Master's blade points, this subordinate will charge and kill. The army did not stop. All of their resolute faces did not have any emotions. The seemingly bottomless ice wind gap did not make them hesitate at all. He could capture it now, but there were many things that he was unable to explain. But he knew that behind all these small and complicated phenomena was an unfathomable power. He did not know how unfathomable it was, but it was obvious that it was much stronger than him. My guess was right. Everyone was startled. To them, it was a name that had been around for a long time, and they were already unfamiliar with it. The Perseus King Court moved quickly and efficiently. But when he saw Tang Tian for the first time, the pride that came from his improvement was instantly washed away. It was as though a bucket of ice water had been poured over him, drenching him from head to toe, causing him to calm down. But Fu Zhengji hesitated. He wanted to remind Tang Tian that no one had ever been able to return to the sacred Saint Galaxy from the Sin Domain. But seeing Tang Tian's determined face, he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Mu Xiao looked at the soldiers in front of him, and the first sentence that he spoke attracted everyone's attention. We have stayed here for 20 years, and people have already forgotten how strong we are. The Wei Yiguan continent snowstorm has covered up our blades, and they think that we are just businessmen. Chapter 775. Relying on his own strength. He was able to take down 2 cities consecutively, and that was evident. Fu Zhengji looked at the formation in the sky with a pale face. Is that an army? Is that the Null Division? He suddenly felt that his previous actions were extremely foolish. He was a martial artist on a list of powerhouses, but facing such a powerful force, he was equally affected. I don't have time. Tang Tian shook his head. Of course, to put it in a more elegant way, gold would shine wherever it went. 1,000 men was enough to form a small-scale army, which meant that he could choose even more tactics than before. To a military general, there was nothing better than that. It was the first time Xiao Hongguang was disregarded like that. Since young, regardless of where he was, he had always been the focus of attention. Even Fu Zhengji was asked a few questions by Ghostface Mask, but he was like air. Han Bingming was also attracted to the scars on the city walls, and secretly gestured to himself. I can do the same thing with my full strength, but it consumes too much energy, and I can't unleash more than a few times. Although they were chasing after the figure, but the gap between them was still getting bigger and bigger. The cruel truth was that Ghostface Mask's Demon Six Seals was much stronger than his own. Everyone had been training extremely hard recently, and the atmosphere of the Null Division had undergone a huge change. Fu Zhengji and the rest then witnessed Ghostface Mask's might and did not dare to breathe loudly. The Liu family that was a family with 2 lists, they were so glorious, but in the blink of an eye, they had fallen. How could they not be emotional? Xiao Hongguang blurted out, "Can you teach me?" "There is still a group of our men in Galloping Horse City," Tang Tian said. "Niet Xiao, bring some men to receive them. Suyi, you go with them." Xiao Hongguang came to ask him for guidance on the Demon Six Seals, which surprised Tang Tian. but he quickly regained his composure. Harboring such complicated emotions, Xiao Hongguang quietly observed Ghost Face Mask in the dark. All of the noises disappeared. Everyone puffed out their chests and became serious. Xiao Hongguang's current state of mind was in a mess. The joy of not having to face torture mixed with the indignation of being ignored. Xiao Hongguang fell into a dilemma again. Tang Tian did not notice the change in Xiao Hongguang's expression. He continued, "My demon 6 seals was comprehended from the heavy demonic execution. I do not know how to tell you. How exactly is the demon 6 seals? There are many changes that I cannot describe. But I think you can train in the heavy demonic execution. Maybe you will be able to comprehend it. But you can learn from a null division." Tang Tian continued. The entire Sharp Wind City had surrendered, and the null division were naturally sent out. Xiao Hongguang knew where their camp was. He was now 100% sure that Ghost Face Mask trained in the Demon 6 Seals, although it looked very different from what he trained in. He had a misconception that Ghost Face Mask's Demon 6 Seals was the real deal. Demon Tang, demon, they demon, ghost tian, they the demon, they tang, they jitak, are they, Ming, they of, Tang Tan, Tian, they Tian was in of people. They fu, they, of them, of Tang, of them, they. No one had ever doubted Tang Tian's orders. Purple Cuckoo City had moved out in full force, and Tang Tian had consecutively taken down East Immortal City and Sharp Wind City, which made everyone realize that it was not suitable to stay in Purple Cuckoo City. Over 800 air explosions sounded out in unison. The originally loud and clear explosions became extremely gloomy, as though there was a gigantic drum in the air, causing people's hearts to palpitate. Every step the formation took forward would bring forth a shockwave. After suffering for a few days, he was on the verge of collapse. He felt that he would go crazy if he continued like this, and decided to seek advice from Ghost Face Mask. When Xiao Hongguang surrendered, he was still thinking about how Ghost Face Mask would treat him, if he would interrogate him about the Demon 6 Seals, and if he would be tortured. The Demon 6 Seals held a high position in Sin Domain, and no other inheritance could compare to it. If he were to land in the hands of others, it would be normal for him to be interrogated and tortured. Xiao Hongguang only felt countless gazes landing on him, and suddenly, he had a bad premonition. Han Bingning's mood was somewhat gloomy. After everyone discussed passionately, they came to a conclusion. A pervert is still a pervert no matter where he goes. The orderly and uniform footsteps, with a frequency that could cause one's hair to stand, heavily struck on everyone's heart, causing the heart to palpitate, to tremble, pervading out in the air. Sharp Wind City sunk into silence. Heavy demonic execution. Xiao Hongguang was confused. The entire Sharp Wind City was alarmed by the commotion. All of them walked out of their rooms, and when they saw the dense formation, all of their faces changed. He was excited. Is this the absolute technique left behind by my ancestor? Boom! But he still gathered his last bit of courage and sought advice from Ghost Face Mask. Galloping Horse City was the foundation of the Liu family, and without it, even if they had Liu Shangxiang, they would only be struggling at death's door. Amari looked at the terrifying hole on the city wall and was speechless. Crazy Tang is becoming stronger. Amari will also become stronger. Amari suddenly raised his arms and shouted, "Defeat Crazy Tang!" Ghost Face Mask ignored him. They quickly entered Sharp Wind City. The citizens of Sharp Wind City sized up the army curiously. Everyone knew that Ghost Face Mask had an army under him. Army. This term was too foreign to the people of Sin Domain. Yes, heavy demonic execution is the absolute technique of the Shui family. In the past, Ancestor Li had stayed in the Shui family for a period of time. Tang Tian said, "Yes." Nietzsche and Su Yi replied. Nietzsche and the rest stood in front of Tang Tian. Learn from an null division? Xiao Hongguang's eyes lit up once again. It did not matter who he learned from. As long as he could learn it, he said without hesitation, "I will go find them." There is nothing shameful for the strong to be the teacher. He consoled himself and relaxed. But very quickly, he thought, how will Ghost Face Mask send me away? Will he mock me? Or tell me that what I am training in is wrong? Or continue to ignore me? But what made him look forward to it was that the Null Division would have more than 1,000 members. Tang Tian shook his head. It's not them. It's Purple Cuckoo City's Null Division. At the start, Xiao Hongguang thought that Ghost Face Mask was putting on an act, but after a few days, he finally confirmed that the other party did not even place him in his eyes. Everyone be alert. Do not embarrass the master, he said indifferently. Then I will go to Purple Cuckoo City. Xiao Hongguang stood up and prepared to leave. He started to doubt the inheritance that he had trained in for 20 years, and the indescribable pain started to devour his heart. He had a portion of confidence that came from the Demon's 6 seals. The 20 years of confidence was like a mountain, but the foundation was being shaken. There were many minute differences between the two, and Xiao Hongguang even suspected that he had trained incorrectly in many areas. When the Null Division got closer, everyone could clearly see them. The Null Division members around him all turned their faces. All of them wanted to hang a sign on their bodies that said, "I don't know him." Han Bingning then thought about Liang Xiao and Sima Xiangshan. There was no news of them, but she was not anxious, as Tang Tian would definitely save them. In a short period of time, Tang Tian had subdued East Immortal City and Sharp Wind City, causing everyone to be dumbstruck. Every single one of their strengths were not worth mentioning, but when they formed such a dense formation, no one could ignore them. The orderly formation looked as though it had been sliced by a blade. They remained unmoving. Every movement of these people was synchronized. Their footsteps were as precise as a machine's. In the air, they stepped forward at the same time, and an air shield appeared beneath their feet. It was densely packed and orderly, causing people's hearts to turn cold. This sentence caused Xiao Hongguang's face to darken. As expected, Ghost Face Mask will not tell me the secret, but that's right. If it were me, I would definitely not divulge it to anyone. I called for all of you because the situation has changed. We might have to increase our speed. Tang Tian first explained to everyone, then turned to Fu Zhengji and said, "Patriarch, please explain the situation to them." Although Niet Xiao could not see, but his senses were extremely sharp. As a military general, he had to think of the bigger picture and the far-reaching effects of Tang Tian's sudden increase in strength. He had to admit that in the Sin domain, an individual's sudden increase in strength was more effective than an army. Nothing was more convincing than the truth. An army had never appeared in the Sin domain before, and everyone was filled with curiosity. What will an army look like? Fu Zhengji quivered. He immediately stepped forward and spoke respectfully. "Yes. We have received news that Lu Shangxiang has already brought his family and escaped from Galloping Horse City. He should have known of the outcome of the battle and know that he is not Master's opponent. So he decided to leave early and preserve the Lu family's vitality." She did not expect it. Amauri did not expect it. Liang Xiao did not expect it. And Sima Xiangshan did not expect it. Unknowingly, they had already left their past selves far behind. Hearing Amauri's childish words, Han Bingning could not help but smile. The haze in his heart swept away. That's right. I have always treated Tang Tian as my goal. And it is because of that I am able to grow to my current level. The citizens of Sharp Wind City were even more silent out of fear. "Oh, I'll leave him to you." Tang Tian pointed to Xiao Hongguang. "He wants to learn the heavy demonic execution." Fu Zhengji sighed in his heart. He admired Lu Shangxiang's decisiveness, but at the same time, he could not help but feel a sense of sympathy. Seeing that the situation was not good, to cut off one's arm was not something an ordinary person could do. But this choice also caused the Lu family to fall to rock bottom. Niet Xiao was extremely busy. The members that were rescued from East Immortal City had disrupted their training rhythm, but he still thought of ways and added a new training plan. Thinking about Sharp Wind City and the new batch of members that were rescued, Niet Xiao felt a headache coming on. Xiao Hongguang's face that was filled with anticipation once again dimmed down. When a Null Division landed at Tang Tian's residence, the terrifying heavy footsteps disappeared, and the entire city awoke from the silence. The absurd feeling made Xiao Hongguang feel even more conflicted. He was a true descendant of Ancestor Li, and had trained in the Demon's 6 seals since young. To suddenly realize that there was someone in the world who had trained the demon six seals to a level higher than himself, it was a huge blow to his confidence. Master's strength has improved by leaps and bounds. He rejoiced in his heart. Luckily, I do not have any enmity with Master Ghostface Mask. After thinking about it, he decided to speak the truth. I do not know if my Demon Six Seals is correct or not. Dong dong dong. That's right. Ghostface Mask treated him like air and ignored him. Chapter 776. Hearing the words Pig Trotter's King, Wu Ma Tian rolled his eyes. His roasted pig trotters swept the entire army and was the most popular dish for many years. His reputation in the Southern Alliance Army was far from his roasted pig trotters. The time that Xie Yuan had bought for the Swift Army was extremely precious. Of course, there is one more thing, and that is confidence. Wu Ma Tian revealed a look of ridicule. In the eyes of Go Chang Wen Dao and the rest, who are we? Even a strand of their leg hair would be thicker than ours. There are hidden dangers in splitting up, and they will definitely see through it. They will also see through our intentions, but they will still split up. Even if they split up, they're still stronger than us. What are they afraid of? Compared to the hidden danger of dividing our forces, time is more important. The perilous defensive line finally had the chance to breathe and allowed the Southern Alliance's second defensive line, after the initial panic, to finally be set up. The mercenary army was definitely not clean. They were all wily old foxes, swindling and swindling. There was nothing they were not good at. Everyone was talking at the same time. All sorts of evil tricks emerged one after another. They're going to come anyway, so why should we lie? There's no way around it. The Stone Forest Sand Continent is on the turbulent flow belt. Warships can't go there. They have to pass through the Stone Forest and reach the estuary behind our defensive line. Ba ba ba. How did I end up in the pig's trotters? He focused his attention, and under everyone's eager gazes, he continued. But the swift army was only able to block the rope, and the crazy wild boars slowed down, but it is not enough. Because they have more people than us, they are bigger, and their skin is thicker. If we directly collide with them, we have no chance of winning. Then what should we do? Let them split up. As long as they do that, we'll have a chance. We are Chi. Aya snorted. Aya's resolute tone showed her determination. How's the Stone Forest Sand Continent? It's just that the defensive line has to be moved back. If it falls, there will be no buffer. The meeting room became quiet. Everyone was attracted by Wu Ma Tian's actions. Everyone's eyes lit up. That's right. Street fighting. Wu Ma Tian choked and laughed awkwardly. Yes, yes, yes. Chi is long. Siyuan is short. We have many shortcomings, but we also have our strengths. In terms of defense, we cannot compare to the Swift Army. No one could compare to Sure Sun and his group of Underworld Continent lunatics. But in terms of urban warfare, who can compare to us? Big Sister's eyes that were filled with anticipation landed on him. Wu Ma Tian knew that he had to reveal something. If not, when the meeting ends, what awaited him would be a mountain of pig trotters to roast. So, we're going to use urban warfare to deal with them. Wu Ma Tian waved his hand. That's all I have thought of. Everyone should also think about it and see if there are any good ideas. The atmosphere in Skull Unit was extremely tense. Everyone's faces were ugly. This time, everyone panicked. Everyone's spirits rose. That's right, this is only the first battle. What's the rush? Wu Ma Tian took a step back without batting an eyelid. He coughed lightly and spoke. The Swift Army fought a good battle, and they deserve this victory. But in my opinion, they've also encountered the most suitable battlefield for them. Defensive formation? Who could beat them? But everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. What if they went around to other continents? An army's reputation was built from fighting, and borrowing the advantage of a defensive formation, they were able to defend against enemies many times their size. That was an elite army. But if the enemy's general was Iron Spear Cliff, that was not something any ordinary elite army could do. The nickname Pig Trotter's King spread like wildfire. Wu Ma Tian initially tried to correct everyone. But after that, more and more people started to call him Pig Trotter's King, to the point that Master Bing even called him Pig Trotter's King in an army meeting, causing him to despair. His abilities gained the trust of the entire Skull unit. The Skull unit that held the same position as the Swift army, their performance in the battle could only be considered average. They did not collapse, but retreated in an orderly manner, and from the tactics manuals, they did not have any bright spots and did not make many mistakes. Xieyuan became famous after the battle and was currently a famed general. In the discussions in the market, many people even felt that the Swift army strength had already reached the level of a gold rank army and was only a step away from becoming a gold rank army. Lies. Didn't we escape the last time? This time, if we pretend to escape, they will definitely chase after us. We can first set up a formation in the Water Fairy continent, and then feign cowardice and escape towards the Stone Forest Sand continent. They will definitely chase after us. I was too useless. I'm sorry, everyone. Xieyuan had displayed an outstanding view of the entire situation, as well as surprising courage and decisiveness, causing the entire Skull unit to feel ashamed. The Skull unit and the Swift army had joined the Master at the same time and retreated at the same level, and the two armies usually performed at the same level. The two armies had always been competing in the dark, but no one expected for the battle to be so far apart. That's right. Don't scare our brothers. The meeting room immediately exploded into an uproar. Everyone started talking at once. She was always so crude and direct. Time, Wuma Tian said solemnly. The most crucial point in this battle is time. Master Bing's strategy is very simple, to drag out the battle long enough. So the defensive line behind is a quagmire. But for the Honorable Martial Continent, it is the exact opposite. They're the guest army, and the longer it drags out, the more disadvantageous it is for them. As long as they are unable to defeat us in a short period of time, their intimidation towards the other powerhouses of the southern region will lose its effect, and they will sink into the quagmire of war. And that is the true quagmire. So, they will definitely split their forces and advance together. That way, they will be able to find the weakness of the defensive line in the shortest time. That's the logic Aya seemed to understand. But why would they split their forces? Then what should we do? Aya revealed an excited look. Her hand could not help but hold onto her sword hilt. The most important use of the first defensive line is to slow down the enemy's speed. He thought for a moment and said, "The enemy is like a wild boar that is sprinting forward aggressively, but as long as their speed is lowered, the threat will be reduced by half. But now, they're being blocked by the Swift army, and their speed has decreased by quite a bit." Everyone listened attentively. They were all mercenaries, and, compared to Xieyuan and who came from a specialized school, their tactical attainments were much worse. But they were still veterans in the battlefield, and now that Wuma Tian had broken down the contents and explained it to them, how could they not understand? A gold rank army, the strongest army in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. In the entire Honorable Martial Continent, there were only 5 gold rank armies, and all of them were directly under the 5 great generals. Oh, that makes sense. Aya, whose eyes were red, immediately bowed to everyone, her heart filled with guilt. For the Swift army to be able to fight such a battle, it was mostly because of Xieyuan's high standard. Aya, who was also a commander, knew that her standard was far from Xieyuan and Pala Pala. The conversation started to turn into a bitter and reminiscing mode. The Skull unit used to be a mercenary army and were extremely proficient in street battles. And after that, with Master Tang Cho and Master Bing's guidance, they became even stronger. Wuma Tian's arrival further clarified this point. Aya's agitated emotions calmed down. Pig Trotter's king is right. We still have to fight. We cannot lose face this time. We must definitely turn the tables beautifully. Upon knowing the truth about the Pig Trotters, the other party immediately became extremely passionate. What? You were the one who made the roasted Pig Trotters? Pig Trotter's king. Oh my, the famous Pig Trotter's king. You don't know this, but ever since you stopped making it, oh my mouth has a faint taste. Let me tell you, I even dreamed of roasted Pig Trotters last night. But under the Swift Army's spectacular performance, they were overshadowed. Aya had a strong personality. When the Pink Skull unit was in dire straits, she was the one who bitterly supported them, and she had never cried before. But this time, she cried for the entire night. In the past, she always felt that she could help everyone. But the cruel reality made her realize how terrible her standard was, and that she had dragged everyone down. "Big sister, what are you doing?" Very quickly, a chorus of voices echoed. "That's right. Everyone has a responsibility. But they don't need to split their troops." Another person said. In the meeting room, a group of people had sinister green lights in their eyes, like a pack of cunning wolves. If he met any other army, they would start with a polite and indifferent tone. "Wu Ma Tian, how do you do? Of course we have to lie. If we don't lie, we won't be able to lie." "That's true. But how we get them to come?" Battles are fought by everyone. Everyone has a responsibility. Seeing that the situation was chaotic, Wu Ma Tian jumped onto the table and shouted at the top of his lungs. "Street battles. We need a good battlefield. The more complicated the terrain, the better, and it has to be big enough. If not, we will not be able to hold them." Master Bing's defensive line is truly ruthless, turbulent flow belt. Out of all the large armies in the Southern Alliance, the Skull unit was the #1 in street battles. Good place. There is no way to fly in the sky. There are sandstorms all year round, and the wind is sharper than knives. They can only walk on the ground. If we lose that place, we will not have the face to live anymore. Wu Ma Tian's strategy immediately gained everyone's approval. Wu Ma Tian coughed lightly, attracting everyone's attention, then jumped down and dusted off the non-existent dust on his hands, and said slowly, "Furthermore, why is everyone so anxious? This is only the first battle. There are still battles to be fought. Are we afraid of not having a chance? Look at Master Bing's battle plan. This battle is so big that it can scare people. We have plenty of chances." But the Dar nickname did not affect his position in the army, other than the violent female commander who would occasionally force him to roast a few pig trotters. Everything else was perfect. He could not help but admire Xie Yuan. Anyone would be able to summarize the situation after the battle, but to be able to think it through at such a crucial moment and still dare to do it, it showed his foresight and courage, which was much rarer than roasting pig trotters. "The enemy will definitely split their troops," Wu Ma Tian said with confidence. "Xie Yuan has just become famous. What will the people outside say? The third best defense under the heavens." Master Bing placed him at the front of the defensive line and gave him sufficient depth and reinforcements. As long as the enemy general is not stupid, they will definitely not fight to the death with Xie Yuan. They will definitely be able to, but it will take a long time and the casualties will definitely be huge. They will definitely move to both sides and find an opportunity. Chapter 777. Do you look like you care? Qiu Su Hua had encountered the southern region's first army, the head of the 3 gold grade armies, the Sacred Pagoda Army. In the face of a famous opponent, the talented young man did not fall into a disadvantageous position. Both sides exchanged blows, both winning and losing. "Qiu Su Hua, we are here. By you who like to be bold and unconstrained, and Guan Jin who handled matters meticulously. The two of them were the best partners." Almost everyone in the southern region thought that the honorable Marshall Continent's goal was not the Southern Alliance, but the entire southern region. The honorable Marshall Continent had been eyeing the southern region for a long time, and their wild ambitions had long been revealed. After the initial panic, the southern region quickly reacted. All the major forces in the southern region reached a consensus to protect the southern region. That's right. Bayou placed his legs on the table and laid down on the chair without a care for his image, using his usual lazy tone. "But to be looked down upon by others, how can I not care?" Gocheng Wendao's side had gained the upper hand with a show of strength. Other than Xie Yuan, the Southern Alliance's first line of defense had crumbled overnight. This also allowed everyone to clearly see the insurmountable gap between the Southern Alliance and the honorable Marshall Continent. From then on, the White Crow Army entered the eyes of the higher-ups of the Bai family. After that, he won every battle. Although he didn't have any world-shaking battles, the number of experts that fell at his hands were as many as the hairs on a cow. The White Crow Army also became stronger from a bronze army. They were promoted to a silver army, and finally, at the end of the year, they became a gold rank army. The honorable martial continent's three great armies, Gocheng Wendao, Chiu Hua, and Mo Xian, were like three arrowheads that advanced together. No one in the Bai family would have thought that the Bai family would be supported by such a person in the future. The Southern Alliance just experienced a crushing defeat. Guanjin reminded Bai Yu, then said, "Your old classmate fought well." He was different from Xie and who was gentle and strict. Bai Yu's character was frivolous and frivolous. He was quick-witted and had the nickname of Southern Region Fox. Whether it's worth it or not, only they know. Bai Yu yawned. Now that the entire Southern region believes that they are coming for the entire Southern region, they have never thought, what if they are really going for the Southern Alliance? Splitting into three was easy to explain, as the front could not accommodate so many armies. And, look, is there anyone helping the Southern Alliance? No, why not? Everyone's strength was attracted by Mo Xian and Chiu Hua. Guanjin was stunned. Then we're just going to let Ma Xin head to the Southern Territory? Guanjin's face revealed a serious look. He trusted Bai Yu's judgment, although he looked like a fool, but his judgment towards the battlefield was extremely sharp and had never been wrong. I know him. He has the ability. Bai Yu's expression also became serious. He is the kind of person who, as long as you give him the opportunity, he will definitely grab it. The Southern Alliance's defeat only proves that they are a group of amateurs, but they have a top-notch commander. You're not going to deal with him? Guanjin involuntarily put down her teacup and frowned. Other than us, no one could stop him. Guanjin resisted the urge to roll her eyes and poured herself a cup of hot tea to moisten her throat. Ma Xin isn't easy to deal with. Bai Yu's life was rather interesting. He was mischievous since young, until he graduated. He and Xie were classmates, but unlike Xie, who excelled in both academic and moral conduct, he copied homework, skipped classes, and cheated on exams. He was a well-known problem student in the school. If it wasn't for the Bai family, he would have been expelled from the school long ago. He looked at Bai Yu, who was sleeping. This guy has tricked everyone. The Honorable Martial Continent said that their target is the Southern Alliance. But when the Southern Wind Army suffered heavy losses, the entire southern region went silent. Compared to Gocheng Wendao's terrifying offensive capabilities and Chiu Hua's overflowing talent, Ma Xin did not seem to be too dazzling. But in the end, it was this unremarkable guy who fought the strongest battle. Panic quickly spread throughout the southern region. Guanjin started to think that he was joking. Are top-notch commanders really cabbages that can be found on the streets? After graduating at the age of 16, he returned home and immediately ran to the Patriarch to request for an army quota and clamored about forming his own army. Such a ridiculous request was naturally rejected, but who knew that Bai Yu did not have any intention of giving up and started to harass him day and night. The Bai family patriarch and clan elders were extremely annoyed and decided to use an army quota to send the troublesome brat away. Guanjin immediately realized the beauty of Bai Yu's method. We need to hide our tracks. The Honorable Martial Continent has infiltrated the southern region deeply. If we are able to suddenly appear at Chiu Hua's side, he will definitely panic. Sacred Pagoda Army. Bai Yu's face was crafty. We are gold rank rookies. Of course we have to follow our big brother. Furthermore, don't you think that 2 against 1 is great? They actually dare to look down on us? Their foresight is truly terrible. Bai Yu saw Guanjin's ugly expression and laughed. Don't bother about that. The Southern Alliance is weak, but the Shang continent is strong. If the Honorable Martial Continent thinks that Gocheng Wendao alone is enough, they will definitely suffer. In truth, I would rather fight the 5 Honorable Martial Tigers, or the Sacred Pagoda, than fight with the Shang continent. Bai Yu slapped his forehead. I forgot, it's 2. Compared to the other 2 gold rank armies, they had long histories and inheritances. The White Crow army had just been promoted to a gold rank army. Even I feel that he is difficult to deal with. Hey, do you not believe in my foresight? Bai Yu's face was unhappy. Since it's just a verbal quota, I'll let him do as he pleases. Both parties had the same number of gold rank armies, and even if they were at a disadvantage, they still had the strength to fight. As for Mo Xian's side, They had defeated the Southern Wind Army, which was also a gold rank army. All right, as long as they have fun. But no one thought highly of him. They never thought that Bayou would actually build an army, causing the patriarch and clan elders to be surprised. But of course, it was only a slight surprise. They all felt that it was most likely just for show and randomly pulled a bunch of brats to make up the numbers. Since you know about it, then I have nothing to do with it anymore. I will sleep first. The Sacred Pagoda Army and the Southern Wind Army moved out. Our qualifications are too shallow. Guanjin, who finished reading the news, said calmly. He was Bayou's adjutant and one of the elders of the White Crow Army. Not going. Bayou moved his body slightly. Thinking about Tang Tian's group, the sleepiness on his face disappeared, and he revealed a sneer. The Honorable Marshall Continent and the Southern region are underestimating the Shang Continent too much. So you think they could stop Gochang Wendao? No one took it to heart. To them, Bayou was just acting on a whim. Is an army so easy to build? Money, men, equipment, etc. Is that something a 16-year-old can handle? Guanjin was startled. Guanjin was long used to it. He was excited by Bayou's brazen idea and wanted to immediately set it up. He finally understood why their route was so strange. Half a year had passed, and just when the Bai family thought that Bayou was most likely dead, Bayou brought the injured army and miraculously returned. Every piece of news was filled with pessimism, as though the southern region was already defeated, and no one even mentioned Bayou's reinforcements. Bayou yawned continuously, his eyelids drooped, and after a while, he started to snore. A top-grade commander? Guanjin was surprised. Bayou's eyes were always at the top, but it was rare to hear such a high evaluation from him. How did Bayou obtain his graduation certificate? The patriarch and the clan elders all knew it clearly. Why stop him? Bayou asked. Guanjin subconsciously retorted, Impossible. The Southern Alliance is not worth them mobilizing so many armies. Furthermore, if it was for the Southern Alliance, they would not need to split into three. A battle between gold rank armies was rarely seen in history. Then are we going to reinforce the Southern Alliance? Guanjin asked. The daring Bayou pulled the newly formed army and excitedly ran out to search for pirates. Everyone in the Bai family jumped in shock. They immediately sent people to search, but to no avail. When Bayou said that, he looked as though he had just woken up. He had risen to the ranks of famed generals 20 years ago, and the White Crow Army under him was one of the three great gold rank armies in the southern region. Even the Southern Wind Army was not Moxion's opponent, so no one felt that Bayou could defeat him. But Bayou could sleep, but he could not. The two of them had always cooperated like that. Bayou moved his lips, but Guanjin was the one doing the actual work. Guanjin was meticulous and rarely made mistakes. Although I do not understand why you have so much confidence in them, but I hope that your judgment is correct. Guanjin could not be bothered to argue with him and asked directly, Then where do we go now? Then we will not go against him. Bayou said casually. Almost everyone was pessimistic about the Southern Alliance's future, and to them, the fall of the Southern Alliance was only a matter of time. Everyone knew that the Southern region's fighting strength was weak, but luckily for them, the Honorable Marshall Continent had misgivings and only sent out 3 gold rank armies. As such, on paper, both sides looked about the same. Enter? He won't. Moxin is a cautious man and will definitely not make the mistake of entering alone. This is not the Honorable Marshall Continent. If he enters alone and his path of retreat is cut off, he will cry. Bayou scoffed. Why would the Honorable Marshall Continent make such a huge move just for the Southern Alliance? The Southern Wind Army's defeat had caused an earthquake that far exceeded the collapse of the Southern Alliance's defensive line. From the start, no one believed that the Southern Alliance could defend against the Honorable Marshall Continent's army, just like how no one believed that the Honorable Marshall Continent came for the Southern Alliance. Because their commander is outstanding? Guanjin asked. No. Bayou shook his head. It's Meng Nan. He is an inconceivable man. He is not too smart, but he is never afraid, never retreating. Even if he does not see hope, he will not give up and will fight with his life on the line. The aura that he brings to the Shang continent is the most terrifying. They were both gold rank armies, but the disparity in fighting strength between the two sides was huge. They were different from the newly promoted White Crow Army. The Southern Wind Army was a true veteran powerhouse, and no one had expected that the Southern Wind Army would actually lose. Chapter 778. The seals were slightly shaky, but they were still complete. Tang Tian immediately became excited. Without saying a word, he soared into the sky and rushed high up. My request is simple. All of you advance together and tear apart this defensive line. His right hand had completed all of its transformations, like a pool of water that could no longer hold a single drop of water. Apart from throwing this punch, he couldn't do anything else. What can I do with my left hand? Heavy demonic execution? Angry fist seal? Grasping flower seal? Or weeping sword seal? After the continuous intense battles, all of them were powerful martial artists on the list of powerhouses. His horizons had been broadened, and he had gained many insights. Xie Yuan is very strong. That was the first thought that surfaced in Go Chung Wendao's mind when he heard a cliff setback. At that time, he was completely relying on his instincts to fight. He did not collapse, but he did not leave the critical point either. Unexpectedly, his fighting strength was extremely ferocious at that time. Everyone stood up at the same time. Their expressions were cold as they acknowledged the order. Other than being cold, his words did not have any emotions. The Demon Six seals similarly exhausted the power of the physique, and following the changes in the seals, the remaining physical strength in his body was quickly sucked dry. That's right. He maintained his meditation and slowly recalled all of his experiences. He was not unfamiliar with such a state. In his life of training, he had encountered such situations many times. Another God Fist? Every time I use God Fist, won't I be exhausted to the point of death? How can I let my physical strength run out? Tang Tian shook his head. His body was already extremely weak and was definitely unable to endure a second God Fist. If he were to forcefully activate it, he would definitely fall unconscious or even suffer a backlash. What else can I do? Go Chung Wendao's tone was indifferent. His half-squinted eyes suddenly opened, revealing a cold blade aura. Tang Tian slowly opened his eyes. The world in front of him had become completely different. He did not push the blame away, nor did he give any excuses. Failure was failure. The reason why he did not move towards Galloping Horse City was because he felt that he had reached another bottleneck. God Fist. He still had God Fist. His expression became cold once again, and his tone became extremely sharp. We have not fought outside of the honorable martial continent for too long. We are not familiar with each other, and our understanding of the Southern Alliance is limited, but that is not an excuse for failure. Although his body was empty, it had not reached the critical point yet. Could it be that everything in the dream was what he had experienced? His godly fist was based on deducing all the variations of the basic fist technique, then reversing it, simplifying it, and condensing all the variations into one ultimate fist technique. This fist no longer had any transformations, only the transformation imprints, and it was these transformation imprints that attracted the law threads that were related to it. Due to the large number of transformation imprints, it resulted in the phenomenon of law threads being attracted. Go Chung Wendao squinted his eyes. A look of admiration flashed past his eyes. Regardless of victory or defeat, Cliff would never find excuses for himself, and he would never question any orders. Neither Kin nor Zeke could compare to Cliff in this regard. Out of the 6 demon seals, he had gained enlightenment on 3 seals, but other than the Angry Fist seal, he had only gained enlightenment on the Grasping Flower seal and the Weeping Sword seal. Previously, he had thought that it was just a dream, but Xiaolan and the Undying Sword made him understand that it wasn't as simple as that. The terrifying aura of the Divine Fist swept across the entire city. Everyone looked at Tang Tian in shock. Yes, Cliff did not say anything else and sat down. Could it be that this will not work? The space around Tang Tian froze. Countless law threads converged in his hand, and the light ball was compressed to its limit. Suddenly, he thought about the process of training in the 1,000-cleave demonic hand. It seemed to be similar to this. He could not help but laugh bitterly. He never thought that there would be a day where he would be troubled by the recovery of his physical strength. It was something that he would never have imagined in the past. Sharp Wind City was as bright as day. It was truly a tough battle. The fine vibrations penetrated deep into his bones, and the impure thoughts that he was unable to remove were slowly seeping out. The Weeping Sword Seal's strengthening of the body was much slower than the Grasping Flower Seal and the Angry Fist Seal, but its effects were much deeper. At that time, the heavy demonic execution was simply unstoppable, far surpassing his usual self. All of his methods, all of his techniques were completely unleashed to their greatest value. Unknowingly, his body had become so strong that it allowed Tang Tian to unleash his godly fist. But what made him distressed was that it meant that he needed to find a way to continue exhausting his physical strength. All right, this problem seems to be complicated, so Tang Tian threw it to the back of his mind without saying a word. Regardless of whether it was a dream or not, it was able to allow him to gain enlightenment on the Grasping Flower Seal and the Weeping Sword Seal. Especially the details of the dream, they were extremely clear, and he could even remember the feelings he had. Zila. For some reason, he suddenly thought about the feeling when he was on the verge of collapse. His gaze swept across the entire field. Victory! I only want to win. Do you understand? He paused for a moment. His gaze slowly swept across the generals and said indifferently, "We will split up." Formless Spirit Seal. Go Chung Wendao's voice was ice cold. His long and sinister eyes swept across the generals who were seated upright. The war room became silent. His fringe that looked like it was cut by a blade covered half of Go Chung Wendao's eyes. His handsome and somewhat bewitching face was somewhat pale white. That is the critical point. That battle was the most cruel and difficult battle that he had experienced up till now. Countless of times, he was on the verge of collapse, and if he were to go through it again, he was not sure if he could kill his way out. Sit down first. Go Chung Wendao looked at the white-haired Cliff, the cold lines on his skinny face becoming gentler. Cliff, Ken and Zeke were all great generals under him, and amongst them, Cliff had been with him for the longest time and had made the greatest contributions. And he understood his number one general. Cliff was the model of a soldier and would definitely not make any low-level mistakes. More importantly, the Godfist transformations were over. That's right, I still have my left hand. The Golem 5 gestures and the Demon 6 seals had a deep relationship and could be considered as the crude version of the Demon 6 seals. At that time, in their bodies, they formed 5 unique meridians, each with their own unique uses. But after that, Tang Tian used the Sword Tempest Cyclone to temper his body and cultivated the unprecedented zero-energy body. All of the meridians and dantian in his body were swept clean and disappeared. It was as though there was an extremely taut and formless string quietly being plucked by his ears. A string sound came out. Out of the Golem 5 gestures, he was most familiar with the Formless Spirit technique because it could raise his intuition. But for the Formless Spirit seal, he had not gained enlightenment on it, which made him feel weird. All of the generals trembled in their hearts and immediately replied, "Yes." Countless of law threads converged on his fist from all directions, and countless of changing seals swept past his mind. The light aura on his fist became even brighter, and in the blink of the eye, it became like a sun. Such a weak defensive line was actually able to block you guys for 3 days. Cliff, this is your responsibility. Everyone was shocked. Master actually decided to take action personally. Could it be that only in the critical state can I truly unleash my full potential? I will knock out Xie Yuan and leave the rest of you guys, no problem, right? But how can I enter the critical state? Tang Tian frowned. His current physique had reached a point where it could cause people's hair to stand. This strength not only included the power of the physique, but also the intense life force, as he had swallowed too much life origin essence. Ordinary battles were unable to exhaust his physical strength, because the speed of his physical strength consumption could not even keep up with his recovery. Tang Tian was not resigned. He had a faint intuition in his heart that his guess was most likely correct. I am very disappointed. His body that had initially stopped improving was actually improving again. Tang Tian, who was racking his brains, suddenly had a light in his eyes. I got it. An unfamiliar yet familiar seal suddenly barged into his mind, and almost subconsciously, his left hand formed seal. Once that thought popped out, he could no longer suppress it. Tang Tian's current thirst for power was almost fanatical, regardless of the method. As long as it could increase his fighting strength, he would choose it without hesitation. Cliff stood up with a bang and answered with his head held high. Yes. What else can I do? Their morale is good. Seems like Xiaoyu and did not affect them much. He's like a killing machine. Above the clouds, Tang Tian's eyes lit up like stars. He slowly pulled his fist back. Tang Tian opened his eyes. The undying sword's fine vibrations swept through his body continuously. Although many of the generals maintained their calm, but the shock in their eyes betrayed the shock in their hearts. But the three generals, Cliff, Ken, and Zeke, did not reveal any look of surprise. Everyone was waiting for him to save them. He still had to kill his way back to the sacred Saint Galaxy. No, it's not enough. But regardless of how many changes it had, when it was completed, it was only one. No, I still have my left hand. Tang Tian suddenly thought of it. Illusion? I've never heard of such a powerful illusion before. When the formless spirit seal was formed, Tang Tian's body trembled, and a faint white aura, with him as the center, spread out in all directions. If not for the countless of sapphire blue dwarves in his dream, he would never be able to reach the critical point. Tang Tian could feel the power of the physique in his body being sucked out at an astonishing speed, the weakness of his physique, the strength of his glass-like mental state. The two completely different feelings appeared at the same time, and it was extremely contradictory. Gocheng Wendao was expressionless. He secretly evaluated in his mind and continued. The opponent's willpower is very tenacious and will not admit defeat easily. They want to drag us into a stalemate. They want to use the defense line to form a meat grinder, so they hope that we will split up. Time. Gocheng Wendao said coldly, if we want to break away from the stalemate, then we need to be like a sharp blade cutting through cowhide and completely destroy their defense line, so that they will not have the time to reorganize their defense line. I do not have the patience to continue fighting with them. They are betting on us splitting up, and that will offset our advantage in numbers. But this will also increase our chances of finding a weakness in their defense line. Chapter 779. Compared to the luxurious and dazzling stronghold that could become a target from 100 kilometers away, the interior of the Ocean Guardian stronghold was extremely chaotic. Just by piling up rare materials, this place had almost become a warehouse for rare materials instead of fortress. The eyes of the soldiers beside Xie Yuan lit up. This was the warship weapon that they often practiced, Moonwave Wheel, nicknamed Small Boat. The Moonwave Wheel needed 12 people to control it. It was extremely powerful and required a high level of proficiency in wavy blades. Xie Yuan quickly came back to his senses. He opened a chest, and a strange black gold weapon appeared in front of everyone. Compared to complicated spirit treasures, warship weapons were much simpler. To others, it was very difficult to refine, but to Little Fool, it was not a big problem. He had the soul-devouring flame, so it was extremely easy for him to refine the black gold. Large boxes that were more than 15 feet tall were neatly placed inside the transport ship. Xie Yuan, who was used to living a hard life, was dumbfounded. Almost half of the materials were materials that he knew of but could not afford to use, and now they were all piled up here. Xie Yuan was inexplicably amazed. Who knew that the Shang continent would actually be able to produce near gold-grade moon ripple wheels? The speed of improvement was truly stupefying. Xie Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, he pounced forward to examine it. Borrowing a large number of techniques from the forceful subjugating bead, the warship weapons that Little Fool refined were different from ordinary warship weapons. All right, he was just that cowardly. A dazzling golden light suddenly lit up the transport ship. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at the source of the golden light. He took the list, scanned it, and was stunned. Wait a minute. Pay attention to the angle of attack. But when he saw the chest, his eyes couldn't help but freeze. The chest was as tall as a person, and it was actually made of black gold. Your survival is the key to our victory in this war. 200 warship weapons. This number far exceeded the amount he had requested. Pseudo-gold-grade warship weapons were already quite rare. Xieyuan was very clear that in the market, a quasi-gold-grade moonwave wheel was incomparably expensive. Looking at the 200 moonwave wheels neatly arranged in front of him, he could only sigh at the wealth of the upper echelons. Warship weapons were powerful, but they were expensive. Nearly half of the cost of a warship was spent on the battleship. There were a total of 200 moonwave wheels in this batch. This number even exceeded the total equipment of a fleet, so it was no wonder that the soldiers were pleasantly surprised. Xieyuan patrolled back and forth at the defensive line without stopping to rest. There were many benefits to becoming famous after a single battle. For example, the morale of the soldiers would skyrocket, and the newly recruited soldiers would also feel honored. Little Fool then placed his attention on the warship's weapons. "It's nothing. It's my job." Li Ran handed Xieyuan a list. "Please check and accept it." Moreover, he was too rich and overbearing. Reinforce this place a little more. Xieyuan never thought that the honorable Martial Continent would invade, nor did he expect that the Ocean Guardian stronghold would become a protective barrier for the Shan continent so quickly. The reason why he had spent so much effort to remodel the Ocean Guardian stronghold was because he could not bear to see the materials being squandered. He continued to examine, and suddenly his body froze. He did not know why, but he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. 200 gold-grade moon ripple discs, that was too terrifying. Up till now, he had not seen a true gold-grade moonwave wheel, but he still had the basic knowledge. Gold-grade warship weapons were definitely unable to be mass-produced. Little Fool had tears streaming down his face countless of times. The truth had proven that compared to Bing's treachery, he was still too inexperienced. It was in the shape of a shuttle, shaped like a small boat. The bow of the small boat was raised up with a crescent blade facing forward. The boat body had 2 rows of seats and could accommodate 12 people. After being surprised, his mind suddenly moved. An extremely brazen idea suddenly barged into his mind. Could it be that these moon ripple discs can be used together with the new moon form, Swallow General Whip? The more Xieyuan thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible and wanted to immediately test it out. A large transport ship docked over. Li Ran jumped down from the transport ship. He limped and walked to Xieyuan and bowed. "Commander Xie, the things you need are here." Xieyuan did not stop the soldiers from cheering. His gaze was fixated on the crescent moon and could not move away for a long time. The crescent moon had a faint gold color. The large amount of modifications caused the Ocean Guardian stronghold's fighting strength to increase greatly. From a dazzling and beautiful pearl, it had become a dull and gloomy hedgehog. Xieyuan had long been suspicious. The amount of resources was not right, as though it was too much. Due to his right leg being injured, Li Ran was not suitable to fight at the front lines, so Bing handed the logistics to him. Li Ran was familiar with war matters, his standard was outstanding, and he was extremely strict and serious, and very quickly gained Bing's trust. The moon ripple wheel was completely made of black gold. It was as black as ink, and the faint gold crescent moon was extremely eye-catching. He turned his head and looked at the other wooden chest that he had just pried open. Inside was the crescent moon of the moon ripple wheel, which was also a faint gold color. The gigantic seashell rock was completely hollowed out, with large amounts of rare materials continuously filling it up, causing it to become even more sturdy. The southern region, which was flourishing with commerce, did not lack money, and the cost of building the Ocean Guardian stronghold was even more than money of the same size. A dignified gold armor stood solemnly and silently. "Master Bing still has something for Commander Xie," Li Ran said. "This feeling, it's so familiar. Where have I felt it before? Luckily, it's finally completed." Moon Ripple Wheel. The Ocean Guardian stronghold guarded the southern Jiaxi route. Its strategic significance was self-evident. The southern Jiaxi route was one of the most important sea routes in the southern region, and the Ocean Guardian used to be a supply point for the southern Jiaxi route. After that, Following the prosperity of the southern Jiaxi route, the position of the Ocean Guardian also rose, and it continued to expand and strengthen, forming the stronghold that it was today. Little Fool hesitated for a long time, but in the end he braced himself and worked overtime, spurring the horses. Immediately, everyone cheered. The Moon Ripple Wheel was obviously prepared for them by the higher-ups, as the Swift Army was most proficient in wavy blades. If they had so many Moon Ripple Wheels the last time, they would definitely not have suffered so many casualties. The Shan continent produced black gold, which was most suitable to be used to create warship weapons. So Xieyuan had requested for a batch of warship weapons to increase the stronghold's fighting strength. Although the remodeled Ocean Guardian stronghold was already extremely sturdy and strong, but Xieyuan knew that he had a huge responsibility and did not dare be careless. Thus, he submitted the request. It was truly so. It was formed from a rock that had a diameter of 7 kilometers, with the main body being the seashell rock. The seashell rock was a rather common rock in the Sea of Energy and was able to effectively resist the corrosion of the Sea of Energy. But its hardness was not considered high, and its quality was not considered sturdy. Bing's pretentious words would surface in Little Fool's mind from time to time. He felt that Bing was purely trying to squeeze out his labor force, and was most likely lying to him. But what if it was true? As a stronghold, there was nothing worse than this. The Moon Ripple Wheel in front of him was completely different from the ones he usually used. There are other things? Producing spirits required time, and the star treasures were almost used up. Little Fool thought for a long time, and finally placed all of his attention on the black gold. The black gold's performance was outstanding, and was suitable to be used to create weapons, but it was most suitable to be used as warship weapons. He was suddenly looking forward to Xieyuan's expression when he received the batch of weapons. Master Little Fool refined the lotus. Could it be that the Moon Ripple Wheels were refined by Master Little Fool as well? Xieyuan was slightly surprised. And considering that the Ocean Guardian stronghold was remodeled by Xieyuan, Bing handed the task of guarding the Ocean Guardian stronghold to Xieyuan. But now, he was extremely glad that he was able to make it in time for the war. When Xieyuan saw the Ocean Guardian stronghold for the first time, he had the same thought. After being mixed with a large amount of golden mica and being rebuilt, the Ocean Guardian stronghold looked even more luxurious and dazzling. The golden stars that looked like stars could be seen from afar. The golden mica could increase defense, but it was too conspicuous and required a new layer of mortar. The interior was hollowed out, and the space was huge, but the structure was too brittle, so he brought over a large amount of black gold rocks and rebuilt 12 gigantic supports to ensure that no matter how strong the attacks were, the stronghold would not collapse. He had to redivide the living area and battle area, and increase the emergency reinforcements, etc. Xieyuan suppressed the suspicions in his heart and opened the chest. But his personal time and energy were limited, and time was tight, so he could only refine the core components, while the other components were completed by others. But even so, due to the huge amount, he was still extremely tired. Without hesitation, he obtained the rights from Bing and started to make bold and decisive changes. Could it be? He suddenly opened his eyes. The moon phase swallows command whip, but did not leave any marks on Xieyuan. He had been through a lot, and was used to the fickleness of the world, and only treasured what he had. He was shocked by the 200 half-gold grade moon ripple discs that were sent over. Luckily, they are not gold-grade moon ripple discs. Right from the start, the Ocean Guardian stronghold was like a luxurious palace, and not an unbreakable stronghold. To be more accurate, it was half gold grade. Out of all the components of the moon ripple discs, only the crescent moon was gold grade. The rest were silver grade. After the Southern Alliance was established, the Ocean Guardian stronghold fell into their hands, and Xieyuan received orders to investigate. The training of the recruits is too slow. We need to hurry up. Place the emphasis on controlling the warship weapons. That's right. It was the aura of the moon phase swallows command whip. But Li Ran was still waiting for him by the side, so he resisted the urge. Li Ran was the leader of Qin Yu Ran's bodyguards, and had performed outstandingly in the battle at the Moon Manor. Qin Yuran felt that it was a waste of talent to have him by her side, so she recommended him to Tang Tian, and Li Ran quickly became one of Tang Tian's subordinates. Ocean Guardian Stronghold. Xie Yuan revealed a look of joy and greeted Li Ran. "You've worked hard. What's inside?" The Ocean Guardian Stronghold was one of the most famous strongholds in the southern region, and after many generations of expansion, its size continued to expand. There was once a military general of the Honorable Martial Continent that hailed the Ocean Guardian Stronghold as the pearl of the southern region's sea of energy and mocked the Ocean Guardian Stronghold for being flashy, but without substance. This kind of mockery was often heard, and the most common saying was that the cost of the Ocean Guardian Stronghold was enough to build 3 strongholds of the same scale. Chapter 780. Following the reports from the front lines, Mei Chun Xiu calmed down. The Southern Alliance's first line of defense had been destroyed, although an outstanding military general like Xie Yuan had appeared, but the Southern Alliance's overall performance was not good. Destroying the Southern Alliance's supply lines, destroying the Southern Alliance's workshops, the continuous destruction would cause the Southern Alliance to lose blood. Although he did not think that the Southern Alliance could stop the Honorable Martial Continent's army, but his actions could greatly increase the speed of the Honorable Martial Continent's conquest of the southern region. In time, the pirates' activities quickly became rampant. Destruction, he only needed to destroy wantonly. The current Steel Mountain continent was like a half-naked beauty that was extremely alluring. Their only obstacle was the Steel Mountain army. At such a close distance, the stronghold guarding the estuary was instantly enveloped by the concentrated attacks. The other reason was their fighting style. The underworld continent's demonic mounts emphasized on mobility, long-distance assaults, harassment from the enemy's rear, and in the initial phase of the war, the Southern Alliance's most urgent need was to establish a defensive line to stabilize the situation. Attack with all your might. He could imagine how much pressure the Southern Alliance's front lines were under. Mei Chun Xiu could even clearly see the figures sleeping behind the observation window of the stronghold, and his mouth could not help but reveal a smile, but the smile did not have any warmth, but was as cold as a blade. Shursen was like an experienced hunter, patient and cautious as he followed the white pirate from afar. 200 M. Since ancient times, wars of conquest would always be met with the most intense resistance from the citizens. The sea of flames flickered, distorting the sea of energy. The Southern Alliance, who was pressuring the borders, could no longer care about him. "Boss, we caught them. Follow them. Be careful. Don't attract their attention." When the pirates regained their footing, they stared blankly at the terrifying flames that soared from the stronghold. After a short moment of silence, they cheered loudly. "Chiu Su Hua, who is the same age as me, should not be nervous in such a situation." In the distance, a group of indistinct figures quietly appeared from the darkness. Countless thick rays of light and balls of light that were as dense as rain shot out from the pirate ship at the same time. 500 M. In their vision, the stronghold at the estuary was getting closer and closer. They were quickly approaching, but the stronghold did not sound out any alarm, as though the enemy did not notice them. Mei Chun Xiu was very calm. Even if the front lines were advancing smoothly, he did not think that the war would end in a short period of time. This was a war of conquest. To the southern domain, there was no way out. They would fight to the death. Thinking about the mountain of weapons, Mei Chun Xiu wanted to drool. The white pirates that he led were the elites of the Honorable Martial Continent, but their equipment was still worrying. Of course, to the pirates, the current equipment was enough to satisfy everyone, but to the ambitious Chun Xiu, it was far from enough. The Suji Worldwide Commerce was one of the most important members of the Southern Alliance, and with its status as a weapons merchant, the majority of the weapons in the Southern Alliance came from them. The first battle of the famed Mei Chun Xiu, this was something to look forward to. Mei Chun Xiu knew that this was a spy who had infiltrated to receive them, but seeing that the estuary was getting closer, his heart was still beating rapidly. He could not help but hold his breath. The fleet quietly moved forward. The deep and dark sea of energy was extremely quiet. Only the distant light emitted a faint orange light that shone through the windows of the warships. But Sher Sun did not give up. The honorable Marshall Continent's invasion had caused the various powerhouses in the southern region to panic, giving Lady Ro a chance to display her abilities. And if Mei Chun Xiu's pirates were to find a foothold, it would undoubtedly be akin to burying a poisonous thorn in their backs. His tone was extremely soft, as though he was afraid of alerting the quiet stronghold in front of him, but the order that sounded like a whisper could be heard clearly in the quiet fleet. The pirates were in an uproar. The stronghold was already within a kilometer radius, and they could launch an attack from that distance. Bing agreed to his request. An even more dazzling light aura lit up from the stronghold. The sturdy and indestructible walls were instantly torn apart like paper, shattering into pieces. The shards did not even have time to fly out, and were engulfed by the dazzling flames. He was slowly closing in on his target, the Steel Mountain continent. He had probed and attacked a few cities, but did not find any traces of warships. He had never thought that Sher Sun would not ride on a warship, but bring the underworld continent's demonic mounts to travel long distances in the sea of energy, chasing after him relentlessly. The Steel Mountain continent was not a big continent, and very few people knew that the extremely ordinary continent was actually the headquarters of the Suji Worldwide Commerce, one of the top 5 weapon magnates in the southern region. It is time for me to replenish myself. Even the pirates were stunned by the scene. The shockwave from the explosion swept through the entire fleet like a storm. Sure enough, the faintly discernible pressure that he felt earlier had disappeared. Mei Chun Xiu, the gentle and feminine name, was a person that even Bing felt was troublesome to deal with. The honorable Marshall Continent's invasion caused Bing to immediately retract his defensive line and ignore Mei Chun Xiu. This battle would definitely shake the Southern Alliance. Mei Chun Xiu never thought that there would actually be people chasing after him. A chance bestowed by the heavens. Land on the Steel Mountain continent. The unstable energy around the stronghold was quickly ignited. In the blink of an eye, the entire place had transformed into a sea of flames. That was their purpose. 300M, a rare sight, his palms were perspiring. Mei Chun Xiu's guest army was fighting, and the backbone of his subordinates were all generals of the Honorable Marshalsea. But that did not change their nature as pirates. No matter how outstanding a pirate was, he was still a pirate. Lady Ro roamed around the various powerhouses. No matter how skillful she was still just a social butterfly. The underworld continent's demonic mounts had been replenished with a large amount of fresh blood, but their overall fighting strength did not increase, and instead fell. He needed time in battles to train and integrate. Mei Chun Xiu led the white pirates and was undoubtedly the best whetstone. Ignoring the strategic significance, the Steel Mountain continent's weak defense was also one of the reasons why Mei Chun Xiu was moved. The Steel Mountain continent only had one army, and it was the Suji Worldwide Commerce's own army. In the Honorable Marshall Continent's intelligence systems evaluation, the Steel Mountain Army was described as a group of merchants dressed in luxurious equipment. Sher Sun led the underworld continent's demonic mounts and chased after the white pirates. But if the two of them were to join hands, it was enough to cause fear. Mei Chun Xiu was extremely excited. The front lines had already attracted all of the Southern Alliance's attention, and the empty back was like an unprotected beauty, causing people to drool. He did not make a move recklessly, and after a few rounds of probing attacks, causing panic, he led his troops and disappeared from everyone's vision. Following the dangerous situation at the front lines, he was not the only one who had his eyes on the juicy cake at the empty back. All of his colleagues were also sharpening their blades. In the chaos and panic, Mei Chun Xiu's white pirates were like sharks hiding in the deep sea. With that thought, the nervousness in his heart dissipated by half, and his breathing calmed down. The estuary was getting closer and closer, but the stronghold did not have any movements, causing him to be extremely calm. This is probably the most important battle in my life. The opponent's craftiness made Sher Sun even more careful. He knew that he only had one chance, and if he failed, it would be extremely difficult to catch the opponent a second time. And the time left for him to resolve this problem was limited. As long as the front lines were in danger, He had to lead the underworld continent's demonic mounts to support them. The construction of any weapon base could not be completed in a short period of time. The honorable Martial continent's elites all bellowed out, calming down the commotion, and the fleet quietly continued to move closer. He was not there to watch the show. I can only hope that the Su-Ji Worldwide Commerce's weapons are truly as exquisite as what they say. If they were able to destroy the Southern Alliance's source of weapons, especially their weapons manufacturing base, it would undoubtedly be fatal to the Southern Alliance. Such an attack would not be apparent in the initial stages, but after the battle continued for a period of time, the lack of equipment and supplies would gradually become apparent, and such an effect would last for a long period of time. Sun was calm. He did not celebrate too early. He had fought for so many years and had never met such a crafty enemy. Along's tone revealed an indescribable excitement, and when the generals around Sun heard that, they all revealed looks of joy. Sun had his own considerations. The collapse of the first line of defense meant that the pressure on the Southern Alliance would increase. Bing needed to consider the bigger picture, and compared to the bigger picture, be it Mei Chun-Xiu or Lady Ro, they were not as dangerous and direct as the honorable Martial Continent's three fronts. If it was just Mei Chun-Xiu alone, it would not be worth the effort, but behind Mei Chun-Xiu, there was a terrifying woman, Lady Ro. Lady Ro had an acute sense for politics, and was proficient in scheming and plotting in the palace. To pirates, chaos would always be their favorite, and they would only be able to fish in muddy waters. As for whether or not the southern region would be breached, what did that have to do with them? The greedy pirates were only thinking about how to take the opportunity to fish. All of the warships quickly entered the estuary. In the previous hide-and-seek, the enemy could not do anything to him, and that made him extremely excited. Lady Ro did not reveal anything to him. So when he knew that the honorable Martial Continent's army was invading the southern region, he was shocked, but very quickly, he realized that it was the best opportunity. Mei Chun-Xiu was in high spirits. His chest was surging with emotions. At the moment, even if he was facing an elite force, he had the confidence to win. When the last pirate warship entered the Steel Mountain continent, the sea of energy seemed to have returned to silence. Only the remaining half of the stronghold at the estuary was still burning. It was truly a continuous bloodletting. The honorable Martial Continent had infiltrated the southern region for a long time, and after knowing of Mei Chun-Xiu's movements, the honorable Martial Continent's intelligence system immediately provided him with a list of important targets. And in this list, Mei Chun-Xiu deliberated for a long time and finally chose the Steel Mountain continent. If the two of them were alone, they would not be worth worrying about. Get closer. It was as though the fleet was being pushed back 60 m by an invisible hand. Chapter 781. The pirates advanced at full speed, immediately causing the commanding officer inside the stronghold to panic. He roared with all his might. Attack! Attack with all your might! Suddenly, a loud alarm broke the peace of the Steel Mountain continent. The pirates were all extremely excited. There was nothing else that could make them more excited than the scene in front of them. The entire Steel Mountain continent was wailing beneath their feet. Countless of riches were opening up for them. Countless people's life and death were in their hands. Steel Mountain Army? Mei Chun-Xiu was surprised. But not only did Sun not expand the scale of the underworld continent's demonic mounts, he had instead suppressed them. Looking down from the warship, Mei Chun-Xiu felt as though he was admiring a beautiful painting. In the end, he was still a disciple of the Su family, and Su Honglin was doing his best. One after another, figures leapt down from the pirate ships. The pirates released weird screams and roars as they descended from the sky. Mei Chun-Xiu's expression remained calm. All ships listen up, advance at full speed, prepare to fire. More accurately, they're the Steel Mountain Army's reserves. Sir Rust looked and laughed. The real Steel Mountain Army has long been scared shitless. Su Honglin also knows that the young master soldiers are unreliable, so he recruited a new batch of people and used the name of reserves. Looking at the numbers, I think half of them have escaped. The honorable Martial Continent's invasion caused the southern region to be in chaos, and everyone was in danger. The armies that they worked with in the past could not even take care of themselves. So how could they take care of the Suji worldwide commerce? The situation in the southern region was quickly worsening. Countless pirates were springing up like bamboo shoots after the rain, appearing out of nowhere and appearing everywhere. A few merchant groups were robbed consecutively, causing the Suji worldwide commerce to be shaken. But they suddenly realized that they could not buy an army even if they had money, and immediately panicked. Only then did they think about their own Steel Mountain army. Sure Sun did not say a word. His right hand held onto the evening snow ocean's white blade hilt. He strode forward. Their speed was the same. Their steps were the same, as though they were cut by blades. Even their breathing was flawless. The Suji worldwide commerce had joined the Southern Alliance and were able to obtain a share of the profits from the pontoon bridge. Their future was bright. The black gold was a strategic material, allowing the Suji worldwide commerce to be like a tiger that had grown wings. Although the Bai family was able to obtain a portion of the profits, but ultimately, they were not specialized weapons merchants. This point could be seen from the weapons orders, as more than 70% of the Southern Alliance's weapons were given to the Suji worldwide commerce. All of Suji worldwide commerce's workshops were working day and night, operating at full capacity. The soldiers were all stunned. After a few seconds, they came to their senses as though they had just woken up from a dream. The barracks was like an explosion, and the soldiers were like headless flies. The scene was extremely chaotic. The pirates who were in a killing frenzy were slapped a few times by the elites of the honorable Marshall Continent before they regained their senses. All the battleships stopped their attacks and pulled into formation, following Mei Chunxio's ship with all their might. After being abandoned for a long time, the current Steel Mountain Army completely did not have any fighting strength. Su Honglin shook his head inwardly. If he had known this would happen, why did he do it in the first place? The 500 men that were chosen from the underworld continent's demonic mounts were the true elites. Every single one of them was a silver saint. They had gone through the cruelest test and were extremely powerful. Any one of them would definitely be a captain if they were in any other place. Sure Sun was a staunch supporter of this training method. The 500 of them moved forward in silence, as if they were giant ghosts of slaughter. Mei Chunxio's volley had not only destroyed the stronghold, it had also destroyed the enemies will to fight. The 500 underworld continent's demonic mounts stood solemnly. The establishment of the Southern Alliance caused Sure Sin's reputation to soar in the underworld continent. The declining demonic mounts once again entered everyone's vision. The underworld continent was like a rotten piece of wood that had once again lit up with hope. More and more underworld continent youths participated in the demonic mounts test, and the number of demonic mounts slowly increased. Mei Chunxio secretly shook his head. In the end, they were just a group of pirates. Their eyes were red from killing. They howled and fired with all their might. The thick light pillars and light balls continued to shoot into the ground. They destroyed as much as they wanted. Everyone in the Steel Mountain continent were stunned by the scene. When they regained their senses, the fighting spirit in their hearts crumbled. The soldiers in the various strongholds surged out of the strongholds like a tide and frantically escaped into the distance. Mei Chunxio was enlightened. Without hesitation, he said coldly, "All ships prepare. We will land and fight." A blue light shot out from a tall pagoda and struck the starboard side of Mei Chunxio's ship, causing it to sway. The reason why Sure Sun was able to follow Mei Chunxio from afar without alerting him was because they did not ride on warships. Walking through the sea of energy had become one of the unique training methods of the Shang continent. The rain in the sky became heavier. The flames in the distance soared into the sky. Explosions continued to occur, and the ground trembled. No one knew that he had once brought the 500 underworld continent demonic mounts, avoiding all the cities, waterways, sentry posts, and even touching the borders of the honorable Marshall continent. The gigantic light regiment devoured the stronghold. Su Honglin was clear of his own matters. Although the Steel Mountain Army was well equipped, but its fighting strength was not considered strong. The Suji worldwide commerce rarely needed to use an army, and even if there were any problems, they did not need to rely on the Steel Mountain Army. The Suji worldwide commerce had many allies and had frequent business dealings with many famous armies. When they needed an army, they had many choices. This group of people were extremely agile and continuously dodged the attacks of the frigates. Beside Mei Chun-xiu stood an unremarkable man. He was the Honorable Marshal Continent's spy hidden in the Steel Mountain Continent. The reason why Mei Chun-xiu was able to take down the estuary stronghold so easily was mostly due to him. He did not have a name, and only had a name, Rust. The only thing that made him feel more at ease was the defense of the Steel Mountain Continent. The Steel Mountain Continent was the Suji worldwide commerce's main camp, and the Suji worldwide commerce had built all sorts of defensive strongholds without hesitation. Su Honglin knew why. The Steel Mountain Army was rotten to the core. As long as the Suji worldwide commerce was willing to pay, all the large armies would be happy to serve. And to the rich and overbearing Suji worldwide commerce, money was never a problem. On the contrary, the Steel Mountain Army that had many Su family disciples, if there were to be a large number of casualties, who knew how many clan elders and managers would run over to find trouble. But with the encouragement from the patriarch, Su Honglin knew that the situation was dire and thought of a way to salvage the situation. He could not count on the playboys of the Steel Mountain Army, so he might as well recruit another group of people to be the Steel Mountain Army's reserves. But under Shi Sen's command, he was just an ordinary soldier. In another 2 months, his term would end, and he only wanted to end it as soon as possible. Recently, he had been talked to by the patriarch and the clan elders many times, and the higher-ups hoped that he could reorganize the Steel Mountain Army. When the fleet was only 300 m away, the commander inside the stronghold revealed a look of despair. Every day, he would continuously train the reserves, but in such a short period of time, only the heavens knew how useful they could be. Although Su Honglin was serious about his work, but he knew that it was just to comfort himself. Bang, bang, bang. The smell of victory was so alluring. It was raining. Su Honglin raised his head. The drizzle falling from the sky landed on his face, causing him to feel cold. It's too late. Mei Chun-xiu was indifferent towards Sir Rust's compliments. His gaze landed on a group of people who were going against the flow of people. Their speed was not considered fast, but in the silence, they were neither fast nor slow, and slowly pushed the curtain of rain away. They were just a group of pirates, and if they were not able to deal with the enemy in a short period of time, they would fall into a dangerous situation. Once the Steel Mountain Continent organized a resistance, it would be their turn to consider if they could escape unscathed. In the distant sky, a group of black dots were approaching at an astonishing speed. Bang! The intense shock wave swept out in all directions, and within a 200 m radius, all of the buildings were razed to the ground. The entire Steel Mountain Army became slack. Even their daily training was halved, and there were even incidents of stealing and selling military equipment. Towards all of these, Su Honglin could only close one eye. All of the pirate ships roared at the same time, and countless light auras instantly destroyed the stronghold. But he was worried that the Suji worldwide commerce would be targeted. Their pitiful fighting strength, the wealth that caused people to drool, would attract many greedy people. But such a lively scene under the dark clouds of war was actually so weak. So it was like that. The 500 underworld continent demonic mounts behind him moved the same way, holding onto their blades and moving forward without making any sound. From the density of the attacks below, Mei Chun-xiu could deduce that the stronghold lacked sufficient soldiers, and their training was rather limited. Su Honglin was worried. If it was the Honorable Marshal Continent's fleet, the moment he gave the order, all of the attacks would stop. Once they crossed over, there would be no more obstacles. Even more light auras shot out from below. Destruction, I only need to destroy. Seeing the group of people pouncing towards them, a cold glint flashed past Mei Chun-xiu's eyes. This group of people who overestimate themselves are the last bit of willpower of the Steel Mountain Continent. Bang, bang, bang. The pirates' tactics were far inferior to a true elite army. Mei Chun-xiu could only do some corresponding training, allowing them to be stronger than the ordinary pirates. Regiment after regiment of flames continued to soar, and one after another, The workshops were blasted into pieces. The panicking crowd screamed and ran in all directions, looking down from the sky. They looked like ants that were being trampled on. The continuous strongholds on the surface entered Mei Chun-xiu's vision. Su Honglin's face changed. He had a bitter taste in his mouth. The thing that he was most worried about had happened. Even the Su Ji Worldwide Commerce's patriarch did not want to touch the misfortune. But to deal with the situation in front of him, it was enough. Bang! Sir Russ praised. General May's decisiveness is truly admirable. Regiment after regiment of flames would light up on the pirate warships, and one of the pirate ships would release black smoke, but none of the pirate ships launched an attack. Not everyone had the courage to let their own fleet take the risk of the stronghold's attack, and when they got close enough, they would fire in unison. There were many strongholds in the Steel Mountain continent, and if they were to destroy them one by one, ignoring the fact that it was a waste of time and energy, it could possibly incite the Steel Mountain continent citizens to rebel. The pirates quickly split into small groups, and like sharp daggers, they pierced into the Steel Mountain Army's weak formation, bringing forth a rain of warm red blood. Inside the flagship, Mei Chun-xiu's cold order was like a snow-white guillotine. Fire in unison,